Hello everyone, and welcome to the DXD Tales. So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was the Dragon Emperor of Avalon, the true king of Nai. TS Issei x Artoria Pendragon x Rias Gremory, Fate Stay Night x DXD. But before we start, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel and hit the like button if you enjoy my content. Let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Awakening of Caliburn. The first rays of dawn filtered through thin curtains, casting golden light across scattered textbooks and rumpled bedsheets. Issei Hyudo. Yu opened his eyes precisely 3 minutes before his alarm, a habit formed through years of martial arts training. He lay still for a moment, listening to the quiet pulse of the world around him, and inexplicable heaviness settled in his chest. Today felt different somehow. His modest room reflected a life carefully balanced between ordinary teenage pursuits and more disciplined interests. Martial arts trophies lined one shelf, while historical texts on medieval warfare occupied another. The wall above his desk displayed a single, meticulously crafted sketch of a sword he'd dreamed about repeatedly since childhood, an elegant blade with inscriptions he could never quite remember upon waking. Issei moved through his morning routine with practiced efficiency, his mind drifting to the strange dream that had plagued him all night. Fragments lingered: a mist-shrouded lake, a woman's voice speaking words in a language he shouldn't understand but somehow did, and a sword gleaming with impossible light. He dismissed the images with a shake of his head as he fastened the last button on his Kuo Academy uniform. Another vision of Camelot, his mother asked as he descended the stairs, her intuition uncanny as always. Though not biologically related, a fact his parents had never hidden from him, Minoru Hyodo possessed an almost supernatural ability to read his moods. Just dreams, Issei replied, accepting the breakfast she'd prepared. Though I'm starting to think I should lay off the Arthurian legends before bed. His mother's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Some stories choose us, rather than the other way around. Before he could ask what she meant, his father entered, newspaper in hand. Takashi Hyodo, a history professor specializing in European medieval studies, had always encouraged Issei's fascination with knights and chivalric codes. Today, however, his father seemed distracted, exchanging a meaningful glance with his wife that Issei pretended not to notice. The exhibit at the University Museum opens tonight, Takashi mentioned, too casually. Ancient British artifacts, including some rarely displayed pieces from the Arthurian period. You should come. I have kendo practice, Issei responded, though something in his father's tone made him hesitate. But I could stop by after. Another glance between his parents. That would be good, his mother said softly. The walk to school gave Issei time to consider his parents' strange behavior. They'd been increasingly watchful lately, whispering conversations that stopped whenever he entered a room. He attributed it to normal parental concerns. He was 17, after all, with university decisions looming, but now he wondered if something else might be happening. Kuo Academy rose before him, its European-inspired architecture standing out against the modern cityscape. Once an all-girls private school, it had become coeducational only 2 years ago, which explained the still skewed gender ratio. Despite being reasonably popular due to his position as Kendo Club vice-captain, Issei maintained a certain distance from most of his peers. Something within him had always felt slightly out of place, as though he were waiting for a life that hadn't yet begun. Hyodo. The voice belonged to Matsuda, one of the school's self-proclaimed perverts, who sprinted toward him with uncharacteristic urgency. His round face was flushed with excitement or exertion, possibly both. You haven't heard, we have a transfer student. A total beauty in the third-year class. Issei raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by his classmates' enthusiasm. I'm sure she'll be thrilled to learn she's already the subject of your objectification. Come on, man, live a little. Matsuda punched his arm playfully. Word is she's a foreigner. British or something. Platinum blonde hair, emerald eyes like something out of a fantasy game. A sudden chill ran down Issei's spine. British, blonde, green eyes. The desker. Ipshin matched the woman from his dreams with uncomfortable precision. What's her name? He asked, his voice unexpectedly tense. Matsuda shrugged. Something foreign. Art something. I don't remember. He leaned closer, voice dropping conspiratorially. But get this, Rumor has it she's related to the Gremory girl. That caught Issei's attention for different reasons. Rias Gremory was Kuo Academy's undisputed idol, brilliant, beautiful, and surrounded by an aura of mystery. Though they'd never spoken, Issei had occasionally felt her eyes following him during school events, a calculating ass's meant that made him wonder what she saw when she looked at him. The morning passed in a fog of restlessness. Twice, Issei caught himself absently sketching that same sword in his notebook margins. During mathematics, a sharp pain lanced through his left arm, so sudden and severe that he nearly cried out. When he rolled up his sleeve in the bathroom afterward, his skin appeared unblemished, yet he could have sworn something had moved beneath it. By lunch period, his sense of disquiet had grown into genuine unease. He declined invitations to join classmates in the cafeteria, instead seeking solitude in the old school building. Supposedly undergoing renovation, the European-style structure stood mostly empty these days, though rumors persisted about the occult research club using the upper floors for their activities. The building's interior was cooler than the outside air, shadows pooling in corners despite the midday sun. Issei climbed the sweeping staircase, drawn upward by an impulse he couldn't name. On the second-floor landing, he paused, a strange sensation prickling at the base of his skull. Someone was watching him. He turned slowly, his body instinctively shifting into a defensive stance. "Most students don't wander into this building without invitation," said a melodic voice from the shadows. Crimson hair caught the light as Rias Gremory stepped forward, her blue-green eyes regarding him with that same analytical look he'd noticed before. Today, however, there was something else in her expression, attention, perhaps even concern. "I didn't realize it was forbidden territory," Issei replied, straightening. The door was unlocked, not forbidden, merely unusual. She approached with graceful confidence. "You're Issei Hyodo, vice captain of the Kendo Club. Exceptional grades in history and literature. Adopted at birth under somewhat mysterious circumstances." He stiffened. "You've researched me. I make it my business to know interesting people." A smile curved her lips, though it didn't diminish the intensity of her gaze. "And you, Issei Hyodo, have become very interesting recently. I don't see why. I'm just an ordinary—" "No," she interrupted, stepping closer. "You are many things, but ordinary has never been one of them. Haven't you felt it? The change happening within you?" The pain in his arm flared again, accompanied by a momentary flash of scales beneath his skin. He clutched it reflexively, eyes widening. "What's happening to me?" he whispered. Rias opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, the building around them trembled. A sound like shattering glass echoed from below, followed by an inhuman shriek that made Issei's blood run cold. "They've found you sooner than expected," Rias murmured, all pretense of casual conversation vanishing. "We need to move, now." "What's found me? What are you talking about?" Another tremor shook the structure, plaster dust raining from the ceiling. The temperature plummeted, Issei's breath fogging in the suddenly frigid air. "There's no time to explain everything," Rias said, pulling something from her pocket, a small red object that glowed within her light. "But know this. What happens in the next few minutes will change your life forever. You will have to make a choice, Issei Hyodo." Heavy footsteps echoed from the stairwell, accompanied by a sulphurous stench that burned Issei's nostrils. An overwhelming sense of wrongness emanated from whatever approached, a fundamental violation of natural law. "What choice?" he demanded, heart hammering against his ribs. Rias's eyes bore into his. "Whether to embrace what sleeps within you, or die as the human you've pretended to be." The stairwell door splintered inward. The creature that emerged barely resembled anything human, a hulking, misshapen form with too many limbs and skin like molten metal. Its face was a nightmare of asymmetrical features, yellow eyes burning with malice. "The spawn of dragon and king," it hissed. Voice like grinding metal, finally revealed. Without conscious thought, Issei moved, pushing Rias behind him in a single fluid motion. Something ancient stirred in his blood, a dual nature awakening after years of dormancy. Power surged through him, familiar yet strange, not one energy but two distinct forces resonating against each other. The creature laughed, a sound like breaking bones. "The boy doesn't even know what he is." It lunged forward with impossible speed for its bulk. Issei should have died in that moment. No ordinary human could have reacted in time. But as the monster's claws descended, his body moved with precision honed through lifetimes he couldn't remember living. He sidestepped, one hand rising in a gesture that felt as natural as breathing. Golden light erupted from his palm, coalescing into a shimmering sword that solidified even as he swung it in a perfect arc. The blade, impossibly beautiful, inscribed with runes that glow, D-like captured starlight, cleaved through the creature's extended arm with negligible resistance. Black ichor sprayed across the wooden floor as the severed limb dissolved into nothingness. The monster howled, recoiling in shock and pain. Impossible, it shrieked. The blade is sealed, the compact unbroken. Issei stared at the sword in his hand, the exact weapon from his dreams and drawings. Caliburn. The name came unbidden to his mind, along with the certainty that this blade was somehow his, had always been his. What am I? He whispered, the question directed as much to himself as to Rias. Something unprecedented, she answered, her voice tinged with awe. Now finish it. Before. The creature recovered with unnatural quickness, launching itself at Issei with renewed fury. This time he was ready, muscle memory guiding him through forms he'd never practiced yet executed flawlessly. Caliburn moved like an extension of his arm, trailing golden light as it parried claws and countered with devastating precision. Each strike revealed more of what slumbered within him, a warrior's spirit refined through countless battles, strategic brilliance that analyzed and exploited every weakness. The absolute confidence of one born to lead. Yet beneath these knightly virtues burned something wilder, more primeval, a dragon's power and ferocity, ancient and untamed. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. Issei's final strike separated the creature's head from its shoulders, the golden blade singing through the air with terrible beauty. As both parts of the corpse disintegrated into ash, the sword in his hand pulsed once before fading like morning mist, leaving his palm tingling with residual energy. Silence descended, broken only by his measured breathing. The battle had awakened something within him, a clarity of purpose and self-awareness that transcended his 17 years of life. You knew this would happen, he said, turning to Rias. It wasn't a question. I suspected, she admitted. There have been signs, magical disturbances centered around you. Dreams reported by sensitives, prophecies suddenly activating after centuries of dormancy. What was that thing? A chaos spawn. They serve the old powers, entities that predate most mythological systems. They're drawn to catalysts of change, and you, Issei Hyodo, have become perhaps the most significant catalyst in generations. A tremor ran through the building again, but different from before, more localized, emanating from beneath their feet. The floor groaned, ancient wood protesting as something shifted below. We should leave, Rias urged, reaching for his arm. Issei shook his head, an inexplicable certainty guiding him. No, there's something here, something calling to me. He knelt, pressing his palm against the wooden planks. Heat radiated upward, not the destructive warmth of fire but the comforting resonance of recognition, one power acknowledging another. The floor beneath his hand shimmered, molecules rearranging as solid matter became temporarily permeable. A dimensional pocket, Rias breathed, watching in fascination as the wood parted like water, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. The old building was constructed over ancient ley lines, but this is magic beyond even my family's knowledge. Issei rose, feeling drawn toward the revealed passage. I need to see what's down there. It could be dangerous. It is dangerous, he corrected. But it's also mine, somehow. He glanced at her, a hint of a smile touching his lips. You're welcome to wait here. Something like respect flickered in her eyes. I've been researching you for months, Hyodo. I'm not missing this revelation. She produced a small crimson sphere that burst into flame above her palm, illuminating the stairway. After you. The stairs descended in a tight spiral, the stone walls adorned with carvings that grew more elaborate as they progressed downward. Issei recognized elements from Arthurian legend, the Lady of the Lake presenting Excalibur, knights gathered around the round table, battles against Saxon invaders, interspersed with imagery that seemed older, more primal. Dragons soaring above ancient landscapes, figures channeling energies through ritual circles, doorways between worlds. These shouldn't be here, Issei murmured, trailing his finger. over a particularly detailed scene depicting a crowned figure with a dragon coiled protectively around the throne. This building is barely a century old. The chamber likely predates the school by millennia, Rias replied. Magical sanctums often exist partially outside normal space-time. The building may have been constructed here precisely because someone sensed the power beneath. After ascending what felt like hundreds of steps, far deeper than should have been possible given their starting point, they reached a massive door. Crafted from metal that resembled bronze but shimmered with iridescent highlights. Its surface bore a complex design. A dragon and sword intertwined in a circular pattern that seemed to move subtly when viewed from the corner of one's eye. No handle or keyhole interrupted the door's smooth surface. Issei studied it for a moment before pressing his palm against the central point where dragon and sword intersected. Caliburn, he whispered, the name rising unbidden to his lips. The metal warmed beneath his touch. Lines of golden light spread outward from his hand, tracing the engraved design until the entire door glowed. Then, silently, it swung inward. The chamber beyond stole Issei's breath. Circular in design, its dome ceiling sparkled with embedded crystals that illuminated the space with soft, diffuse light. The walls were lined with books. Shelves containing ancient tomes and scrolls, interspersed with display cases housing artifacts of obvious power and significance. At the room's center stood a round table of polished stone, its surface inscribed with names that sent a shock of recognition through Issei despite never having seen them before. The round table, Rias whispered, awe evident in her voice. Not a replica, the actual artifact. That's impossible, Issei responded automatically, even as he recognized the truth in her words. The round table is legend, not history. The line between legend and history is rarely as clear as scholars pretend. She approached the table reverently. This chamber appears to be a repository of Avalonian knowledge and power. Issei circled the perimeter of the room, drawn to a glass case containing a single item, a scabbard of breathtaking craftsmanship, decorated with blue enamel and gold filigree. Avalon, he murmured, the name materializing in his mind like a remembered dream. The scabbard of Excalibur, as if responding to his voice, the artifact pulsed with golden light. Simultaneously, the mark on Issei's left arm burned, the skin finally splitting to reveal crimson scales beneath. He gasped, clutching his transforming limb as dual energies warred within his body, draconic power clashing against the awakening force of Avalon. What's happening to him? Demanded a new voice, deep and resonant with ancient power. Issei looked up through pain-blurred vision to see a translucent figure hovering above the round table, a massive red dragon regarding him with eyes that contained galaxies of experience. Drag, Rias breathed, the Red Dragon Emperor, the Gremory heir, the dragon acknowledged before returning his attention to Issei. So you are my newest host. Strange. I sense another power within you, one that should be incompatible with my own. He summoned Caliburn, Rias explained. Manifested it spontaneously during combat. The dragon's massive head tilted with interest. Impossible. The dragon and the sword have been enemies since time immemorial. No vessel could contain both bloodlines. Apparently, I disagree, Issei managed through gritted teeth, forcing himself upright despite the pain. What's happening to me? You bear my sacred gear, the boosted gear, Drag explained. It contains my spirit and grants my wielders access to my power. But you also carry another inheritance, one tied to Avalon and the Pendragon bloodline. These forces have never coexisted in a single vessel before. Because they would destroy each other, added another voice. Feminine and authoritative, all three turned to see a woman standing in the doorway, tall, with platinum blonde hair gathered in an elegant bun and eyes the color of summer leaves. She wore the Kuo Academy uniform, yet carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of royalty. In her hand she held an invisible weapon, the outline suggested a sword, but the blade itself remained hidden from view by some powerful enchantment. Artoria Pendragon, Rias identified her, surprise evident in her tone. So the rumors of your manifestation were true. The once and future king, Drag rumbled. Your presence in this era is unexpected, as is the emergence of an impossible heir. Artoria's gaze fixed on Issei with uncomfortable intensity. The prophecies spoke of one who would unite the bloodlines, but most dismissed it as metaphorical. The dragon and the sword have been opposed since Uther's time. Issei stood straighter, the competing energies within him gradually finding an equilibrium. I don't understand any of this. Yesterday I was a normal high school student. A flicker of something like sympathy crossed Artoria's severe features. No, Issei Hyodo, you have never been normal. Your adoption was arranged specifically to hide you from those who would destroy a child with your potential before he could come into his power. My parents knew. They re-chosen as your guardians precisely because of their knowledge. Your father's expertise in Arthurian studies made him ideal for recognizing the signs of your awakening. The revelation sent a wave of conflicting emotions through Issei, betrayal at the secrets kept from him, but also understanding of the protective intent behind them. He thought of his mother's cryptic words that morning, his hers pointed invitation to the museum exhibit. They were preparing me, he realized. All those books on chivalry, the martial arts training, the historical studies. A knight must be educated in more than just swordplay. Artoria confirmed, though it seems they neglected to mention the dragon in your bloodline. They might not have known, Rias suggested. Sacred gears typically manifest during adolescence, often triggered by life-threatening situations. Didraig rumbled in agreement. The boosted gear would have remained dormant until needed. It was the proximity to Avalon that CED both inheritances to awaken simultaneously. Issei looked between the three supernatural beings, each watching him with different expectations. So what happens now? What am I supposed to do with these powers? That, said Artoria, her invisible sword vanishing as she folded her arms, depends on whether you prove worthy of them. Worthy. Issei's patience thinned. I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't ask to be some prophesied child with competing magical bloodlines. I didn't ask to fight monsters or discover secret chambers or meet legendary kings and dragons. Few who are worthy of power actively seek it, Artoria replied, unperturbed by his outburst. Those who do are rarely suitable custodians. The king speaks truth, Didraig added. In all my centuries of existence, my most formidable hosts were those who viewed power as responsibility rather than prize. Issei ran a hand through his hair, frustration warring with the undeniable sense that everything happening felt right somehow. As though his entire life had been preparation for this moment. You still haven't answered my question, he said after a moment. What happens now? Rias stepped forward. Now you make choices. About how to use these gifts, about which factions to ally with, about what kind of leader you wish to become. She gestured around the chamber. This repository of knowledge and power has revealed itself to you. That suggests you're meant to learn from it. And what about them? Issei nodded toward Artoria and the spectral dragon. Am I supposed to choose between these inheritances? No, Artoria answered decisively. The prophecy speaks of unification, not selection. If you are truly the one foretold, you must learn to balance both aspects of your nature, the dragon's might and the knight's honor. A challenge unprecedented in magical history, Didraig noted. But not, perhaps, impossible for the right vessel. A distant crash interrupted their discussion, followed by tremors that shook dust from the chamber ceiling. Rias's expression darkened. It seems our earlier visitor wasn't alone, she said. The magical awakening has drawn attention from multiple quarters. The chamber will protect us temporarily, Artoria stated, but we cannot remain indefinitely. The boy requires training before facing determined opposition. I have a name, Issei interjected, irritation flaring. And I'm standing right here. Artoria's gaze returned to him, assessing. Yes, Issei Hyodo. You are here, at the confluence of prophecies and powers beyond your comprehension. The question remains whether you possess the character to bear them. Another crash reverberated, closer this time. Issei closed his eyes briefly, centering himself as his martial arts training had taught him. When he opened them again, his expression had settled into resolute determination. Character is demonstrated through action, not words, he said, echoing a phrase his father had repeated throughout his childhood. So let's act. If these creatures are hunting me, they're a threat to everyone in the school, my classmates, my friends, innocent people who have no part in this. He turned to Rias. You know what these things are. How do we fight them? A smile curved her lips, approval evident in her expression. Chaos Spawn are powerful but not particularly intelligent. They're drawn to magical energy, which means we can potentially lure them away from populated areas. The old forest behind the school, Issei suggested immediately. It's isolated enough to minimize collateral damage. A sound tactical assessment, Artoria acknowledged, the faintest hint of approval softening her regal bearing. But you lack the training to control your newly awakened abilities. Then guide me, he countered. Meeting her gaze directly, you're the once and future king, aren't you? The greatest knight in history. Show me how to use Caliburn properly. And I shall teach you to harness the dragon's power, Pendragon added. His massive form condensing until he manifested as a spectral gauntlet over Issei's left arm. The boosted gear responds to will and emotion. Your determination to protect others makes you an ideal wielder. The chamber shuddered as something massive struck the door, the magical protections flaring visibly as they repelled the attack. Issei glanced at the scabbard in its case, feeling its resonance with the energies now flowing through his body. That's Avalon, isn't it? The scabbard that granted King Arthur immunity from wounds. It is, Artoria confirmed. Though its full power can only be wielded by one who truly understands its nature. Which I currently don't, Issei concluded. But we still need every advantage. He looked to Rias. Can we take it with us? She shook her head. Avalon is bound to this chamber by powerful magics. Removing it requires specific rituals. Then we work with what we have. Issei flexed his left hand, feeling the boosted gear's power thrumming beneath his skin. With his right, he reached outward, calling to the sword that had manifested earlier. Golden light coalesced, solidifying into Caliburn's gleaming length. The dual sensations were overwhelming, draconic power racing through his left side while knightly magic suffused his right. Yet rather than conflicting, the energies seemed to resonate, establishing a harmony that felt more natural with each passing second. Boost. Pendragon's voice echoed from the gauntlet, and Issei felt his strength double instantly. We need to reach the forest without endangering civilians, he said. The tactical assessment flowing naturally from some previously untapped wellspring of strategic knowledge. Rias, can you create a diversion to draw attention away from the main school buildings? The Gremory magic specializes in destruction, she confirmed with a slight smile. Creating a diversion should be well within my capabilities. Good. Once we've lured them to the forest, we'll need to coordinate our attacks. These creatures are stronger than they look. You speak like a commander who has led troops into battle, Artoria observed. Issei paused, realizing she was right. The tactical analysis had emerged without conscious thought, as natural as breathing. I don't understand where this is coming from. The blood remembers what the mind forgets, Pendragon rumbled. Your ancestors on both sides were strategists and warriors. Those instincts have awakened alongside your powers. Another impact rattled the chamber, magical barriers visibly straining. Whatever waited outside was gaining strength, learning the weaknesses of their sanctuary. We're out of time for discussion, Rias warned. That door won't hold much longer. Issei nodded, a lifetime of training crystallizing into this moment of decision. Then we fight, together. The three made their way back up the spiral staircase, the dimensional pocket sealing itself behind them. When they emerged into the old school building, the destruction was immediately evident. Walls cracked, windows shattered, furniture reduced to kindling. Through the broken windows, Issei could see dark shapes moving across the school grounds, their forms similar to the creature he'd fought earlier but varying in size and configuration. Chaos spawn rarely hunt in packs, Artoria noted grimly. Someone has directed them here deliberately. The Chaos Brigade, perhaps, Rias suggested. They've been increasingly active lately, targeting potential threats to their plans. Questions for later, Issei interjected. Watching the creatures' movements. They haven't reached the main building yet. We need to draw them away before they do. He reached within, feeling the dual powers at his command. The dragon's might promised raw destructive potential, while the knight's essence offered precision and control. Neither alone would be sufficient, but together. I need to understand how these abilities work together, he said. Pendragon, if I channel the boosted gear's energy through Caliburn. An unprecedented fusion, the dragon interrupted from the gauntlet. But theoretically possible. The sword is a conduit for magical energy by design. It could either magnify both powers or cause a catastrophic feedback loop, Artoria warned. Such an attempt should not be made without proper training. We don't have time for proper training, Issei countered. Those things are getting closer to the main school building with every second we debate. Before either could respond, he charged forward. bursting through the damaged doorway onto the school grounds. Raising Caliburn high, he channeled a pulse of draconic energy through the blade, which flared with crimson-tinged golden light. "Hey!" he shouted, the magically amplified sound carrying across the campus. "I'm what you're looking for. Come and get me." The strategy worked, perhaps too well. Every chaos spawn on the grounds turned simultaneously, their misshapen forms orienting toward him with predatory focus. Dozens of yellow eyes fixed on him with malevolent hunger. "Dragon Knight," hissed the largest creature, its voice like grinding metal. "The master wants your heart beating. The rest of you is negotiable." "Your master will be disappointed," Issei replied, backing toward the forest edge while maintaining eye contact with the lead monster. "Boosted gear. Boost." D-Drag confirmed, the gauntlet pulsing as Issei's physical capabilities doubled again. With speed that would have been impossible minutes earlier, Issei turned and sprinted toward the tree line, hearing the thunderous pursuit of multiple chaos spawn behind him. The creatures moved with unnatural quickness despite their bulk, crashing through undergrowth and snapping tree trunks like twigs. He reached a small clearing just as planned, skidding to a halt and turning to face his pursuers. The first creature burst through the foliage, claws extended and fanged mouth gaping wide. Issei sidestepped with fluid grace, Caliburn slicing through the monster's flank as it passed. The blade sang through the air, leaving a trail of gold and light that seemed to persist for seconds after the strike. More creatures poured into the clearing, surrounding him in a circle of twisted flesh and burning eyes. Issei stood calm at the center, word raised in a classic guard position that felt as familiar as if he'd practiced it for decades. "Now, Rias," he called. Crimson energy erupted from the treeline as Rias unleashed her power of destruction. The magical blast tore through 3 chaos spawns simultaneously, reducing them to dissipating particles. At the same moment, Artoria emerged from the opposite side, her invisible sword finally revealed, Excalibur, gleaming with holy light that made the creatures shrink back in instinctive fear. "The king and the devil," growled the lead spawn. "Interesting allies for the Dragon Knight. I contain multitudes," Issei replied with grim humor, feeling another boost pulse through his system. His strength, speed, and reflexes now operated at 8 times human norm, and the rush of power was intoxicating. The battle erupted in earnest, a chaotic dance of blades, claws, magic, and monstrous flesh. Issei moved with supernatural grace, Caliburn slicing through enemies with precision will. The boosted gear deflected attacks that would have shattered normal human bones. Rias provided ranged support, her destruction magic creating openings and eliminating threats with calculated efficiency. Artoria fought like the legend she was, Excalibur cleaving through multiple opponents with each sweeping arc. Working together, they gradually thinned the horde. Issei found himself naturally coordinating their efforts, calling targets and identifying vulnerabilities with tactical insight that seemed to flow directly from his awakened bloodlines. As the final creatures fell, however, the clearing darkened unnaturally. The temperature plummeted, frost crystallizing on grass and leaves despite the summer heat. A tear appeared in the air itself, not a portal but a wound in reality, leaking shadows that coalesced into a humanoid figure. Unlike the misshapen spawn, this newcomer appeared almost normal at first glance, a tall man in an impeccable black suit. Only his eyes revealed his inhuman nature, pupilless orbs that reflected no light. "Impressive for a newly awakened hybrid," the figure remarked, his voice layered with echoes as though multiple people spoke in perfect unison. "The prophecy understated your potential. Issei Hyodo." Issei leveled Caliburn at the stranger, every instinct screaming danger. "You know my name, but I don't know yours. Names have power, young King Dragon. You may call me Observer." The figure smiled without humor. "I represent interests that find your existence problematic." The old powers, Rias identified, crimson energy still crackling around her hands. Entities that predate modern pantheons. Enemies of order and balance, Artoria added, Excalibur's light dimming slightly in the presence of such ancient darkness. They seek to return reality to primordial chaos. Such limited perspective from supposed immortals, Observer sighed. "We simply recognize that this experiment has run its course. Order stagnates. Structure calcifies. The multiverse requires periodic reset to remain viable. And I'm somehow a threat to your reset button?" Issei asked, buying time as he assessed the being's power, which appeared vast beyond his current comprehension. You are an unforeseen variable. The dragon and sword bloodlines were never meant to converge, their opposition created necessary tension in the magical ecosystem. Observers' gaze intensified. Your existence represents a potential unification that threatens fundamental magical constants. Good, Issei replied simply. The being tilted its head, momentarily confused. You cannot comprehend the cosmic implications. I understand enough, Issei interrupted. You and your kind want to destroy everything because you're bored with creation. You call it reset, to sound less monstrous. He stepped forward, Caliburn gleaming. I may not fully understand these powers yet, but I know they came to me for a reason. If that reason is standing against entities like you, I'm fine with that. Observer's expression hardened. Brave words from an infant power. Perhaps a demonstration is required. The being raised one hand, darkness gathering between his fingers. Before he could release whatever catastrophic energy he was summoning, however, a new voice cut through the clearing. Enough, Watcher. The boy is protected. All eyes turned to see a woman standing at the edge of the trees, beautiful beyond human measure, with silver hair that moved like water and eyes containing every color imaginable. She wore simple robes that seemed to shift between various cultural styles with each subtle movement. Observer froze, the darkness dissipating from his grasp. Lady of the Lake, he acknowledged, voice tight with restrained anger. This matter does not concern you. Everything concerning Avalon concerns me, she replied serenely. As you well know, the compact remains intact, she interrupted. Though modified by circumstances your masters failed to foresee. Her kaleidoscope eyes turned to Issei. The convergence was prophesied long before your kind emerged from the void between universes. The Dragon Knight's birth was no accident but cosmic necessity. Observer's form wavered like heat distortion. My masters will not accept this interference. Your masters have no choice, the lady countered, power resonating beneath her gentle tone. The scales balance differently now. Return to your shadowed realm and inform them that Avalon has chosen its champion. The Dragon Emperor of Knights has awakened. For a tense moment, it seemed Observer might attack despite the warning. Then, with a sound like tearing silk, the entity folded in upon itself and vanished, the unnatural darkness receding with him. The Lady of the Lake turned her attention fully to Issei, who found himself instinctively lowering Caliburn and kneeling before her ancient presence. Rise, Issei Hyodo, she said warmly. Knights kneel only to their king, and dragons kneel to none at all. You must find balance between these natures. You called me the Dragon Emperor of Knights, he said, rising slowly. What does that title mean? It means, young one, that you stand at a crossroads of destiny. She approached, her movements fluid as water flowing over stone. For millennia, the power of dragons and the legacy of Avalon have existed in opposition, Nice. Suri tension in the magical fabric of reality. Now, in you, they have the potential to unite. Potential, Artoria noted, joining them with Excalibur still drawn. Not certainty. Indeed, my king. The lady inclined her head to Artoria. The boy must prove worthy of both inheritances through trials yet to come. Her gaze returned to Issei. The chamber of Avalon has revealed itself to you. Is but the first step on a long journey. A journey to what? Issei asked, the boosted gear fading from his arm as the immediate danger passed. To becoming who you are meant to be, she answered enigmatically. Dragon and knight, ruler and warrior, destruction and protection in perfect balance. Rias approached cautiously, her expression indicating she understood the significance of the lady's presence. The magical community will not all react favorably to this development. Many factions benefit from the traditional opposition between draconic and knightly powers. Politics, the lady acknowledged with a slight smile. Ever the same, regardless of century or realm. Yes, daughter of Gremory, there will be opposition from many quarters. Ancient alliances will shift, new enemies will emerge. She looked between the three of them. Which is why the Dragon Emperor will need allies he can trust. I barely know either of you, Issei pointed out, gesturing to Rias and Artoria. Trust seems premature. Wise caution. The lady approved. Trust must be earned, not given blindly. Yet these two have already demonstrated willingness to fight alongside you against common enemies. Temporary alignment of interests, Artoria corrected. I have yet to determine if he is worthy of Avalon's legacy. And I represent devil interests that may not always coincide with his path, Rias added honestly. The lady's smile widened. Perfect. Honest acknowledgement of potential conflicts serves truth better than false promises of eternal loyalty. She turned back to Issei. What matters is that both possess qualities you will need in the days ahead, Rias's political acumen and Artoria's martial wisdom. Issei considered her words, along with everything that had happened in the past hour. His ordinary life had shattered beyond repair, revealing a reality far more complex and dangerous than he'd imagined. Yet rather than fear, he felt a strange sense of rightness, as though pieces of himself that had always been disconnected were finally aligning. The Chamber of Avalon, he said after a moment. You mentioned it's just the first step. What's the next? Learning to balance your dual nature, the lady replied. The dragon seeks to dominate, the knight to protect. These instincts will war within you until you forge them into a unified whole. And how exactly do I do that? Through trial and experience. Through choices that test both aspects of your power. She gestured to his companions. Through allies who understand different facets of your inheritance. A distant bell rang. The end of the school day. A jarringly normal sound after such extraordinary events. Issei looked toward the main building, visible through the trees, where students would soon be filing out. Completely unaware of the battle that had just occurred or the cosmic forces discussing fate and prophecy mere hundreds of meters away. My parents, he realized suddenly. I need to talk to them. They've been preparing me for this my whole life without telling me. A conversation long overdue, the lady agreed. Though perhaps not the confrontation you imagine. They protected you as best they could, given the limitations of their knowledge and power. The museum exhibition tonight, Issei remembered. That wasn't coincidence, was it? Few things in your life have been coincidence, Issei Hyodo, the lady replied. The artifacts arriving at your father's museum, your admission to this particular school, even your participation in specific extracurricular activities, all guided to prepare you for this awakening. The revelation should have angered him, the idea that his choices had been manipulated, his path predetermined. Yet he found himself strangely accepting. Perhaps the dragon in his blood recognized the futility of raging against cosmic forces, or maybe the knight acknowledged the necessity of proper preparation for weighty responsibility. What happens now? He asked, echoing his earlier question but with new context. Now, said the lady, you begin to write your own story. The prophesied convergence has occurred, but its ultimate meaning remains undetermined. You will face enemies who fear your potential and allies who wish to exploit it. Some will seek to separate your dual nature, believing one aspect more valuable than the other. Her multi-hued eyes held his. Remember that your true strength lies in balance. With those words, she stepped backward, her form becoming translucent. We shall meet again, Dragon Emperor of Avalon, when you are ready for the next revelation. She faded entirely, leaving only a lingering scent of water lilies and ancient magic. The three stood in silence for a moment, processing everything that had transpired. Finally, Rias spoke. Well, that was suitably cryptic and dramatic. A surprised laugh escaped Issei, tension breaking. Is it always like this in the supernatural world? Ancient beings appearing deliver prophecies before vanishing mysteriously. More often than you might expect, Rias admitted with a small smile. Though an appearance by the Lady of the Lake herself is exceptionally rare. She hasn't manifested physically in this realm for centuries. Her intervention protected us from the observer, Artoria noted. Entities of that nature are beyond our current capabilities to defeat. What exactly was that thing? Issei asked, Caliburn finally fading from his grasp as his adrenaline ebbed. A watcher, Artoria explained. Servants of the old powers who monitor potential threats to their agenda. They rarely intervene directly, preferring to manipulate events through proxies like the Chaos Spawn. Which means someone specifically sent them after me, Issei concluded. Someone who knew about my condition before I did. Rias nodded. The supernatural community has been buzzing with prophecies and omens for months. Multiple factions have been preparing for a significant power shift. She studied him thoughtfully, though I don't think anyone anticipated exactly what form that shift would take. Issei ran a hand through his hair, the enormity of the situation finally hitting him. I need to talk to my parents. They deserve to know what happened today, and I deserve some explanations. Agreed, Rias said, but perhaps we should attend the museum exhibition together. If your father arranged for Arthurian artifacts to be displayed, there might be a specific reason, possibly even items related to your heritage. I should return to the chamber, Artoria stated. Its defenses may have been compromised during the attack. The knowledge contained within must be protected. Wait, Issei turned to her. You transferred to Kuo Academy for a reason, didn't you? To watch me, to see if I was this prophesied dragon knight. Artoria regarded him with those piercing green eyes. Yes, though I expected to find an impostor or, at best, a partial manifestation. The simultaneous awakening of both bloodlines was unexpected. Then you know more about what's happening than you've shared. I know fragments and theories, she corrected. Much of Avalon's history was lost even during my original reign. I returned to this era specifically because the prophecies indicated a convergence that might restore what was lost. Then we should work together, Issei suggested. Not as king and subject or evaluator and candidate, but as allies trying to understand a shared mystery. Something like respect flickered in Artoria's expression. A reasonable proposal. Very well, Issei Hyodo. We shall attend this museum exhibition together and see what knowledge it might yield. Perfect, Rias interjected smoothly. The three of us can meet there this evening. In the meantime, Issei should return to classes before his absence raises questions. I'll handle the necessary memory modifications for any witnesses to today's events. Memory modifications? Issei asked, alarmed. Standard procedure, Rias assured him. Most humans aren't prepared to process supernatural occurrences. Their minds create alternative explanations, which we simply encourage. Issei wasn't entirely comfortable with the concept but recognized the necessity. All right, I'll see you both tonight, then. As they walked back toward the school buildings, Issei found himself processing the day's revelations with surprising calmness. Perhaps some part of him had always known he was different, had been waiting for the moment when the truth would finally emerge. Dragon and knight, destruction and protection, power and responsibility. The balance the lady had mentioned wouldn't be easy to maintain, but he felt equal to the challenge in a way he couldn't have explained rationally. For the first time in his life, Issei Hyodo felt truly awake, and ready to become who he was always meant to be. Chapter 1 End Chapter 2, Trial by Steel. The University Museum Specie. Al exhibition hall hummed with quiet conversation as academics, students, and history enthusiasts moved between glass displays of ancient artifacts. Ambient lighting cast the Arthurian relics in an most reverential glow. Weathered manuscripts beneath climate-controlled cases, meticulously preserved weaponry mounted on velvet backdrops, fragments of stonework bearing inscriptions in languages long forgotten by most. Issei moved through the crowd with newfound awareness, his awakened senses detecting subtle magical signatures emanating from certain artifacts. Objects that would have seemed merely historical yesterday now revealed their true nature to his perception. Residual enchantments clinging to sword hilts, preservation spells woven through fragile parchments, truth-compelling runes etched into judicial stones. Can you feel it? Rias murmured beside him, her crimson hair drawing admiring glances from other patrons. She'd exchanged her school uniform for an elegant black dress. She somehow managed to be both sophisticated and striking. The ambient magic in this room is extraordinary. Some of these aren't mere replicas, Artoria confirmed from Issei's other side. Unlike Rias, she'd opted for a tailored navy suit that emphasized her regal bearing while allowing freedom of movement if combat became necessary. Her hair remained in its practical bun, though she'd added a CNGLE sapphire pin that caught the light when she moved. Several pieces contain authentic power from my era. Issei nodded, conscious of his parents watching from across the room. They'd been surprised, though not displeased, when he'd arrived with two beautiful companions. Their knowing glances at each other hadn't escaped his notice. How much did they truly understand about his situation? The Styon had burned in his mind throughout the afternoon as he'd mechanically completed his school day, processing the morning's revelations while pretending nothing had changed. There, Rias said suddenly, indicating a small display in the corner. That manuscript shows traces of genuine divination magic. They approached the yellowed parchment, protected behind glass and bearing text in archaic Welsh alongside intricate illustrations. The central image depicted a crowned figure wielding a sword in one hand while a dragon coiled protectively around their throne, eerily similar to the carving Issei had seen in the chamber of Avalon. The prophecy of Murthan, Artoria identified, a hint of tension entering her voice. I believed all copies were destroyed during the Saxon conquest. What does it say? Issei asked, studying the unfamiliar script. Before Artoria could answer, Professor Takashi Hyodo appeared at their side, pride evident in his expression as he observed his son's interest in the exhibition's centerpiece. It foretells the coming of a ruler who would unite opposing forces, his father explained, seamlessly entering their conversation. The dragon of destruction and the sword of protection, traditionally viewed as natural enemies, brought into harmony through a single vessel. His eyes met Issei's with unspoken meaning. Many scholars dismissed it as metaphorica, representing the unification of warring kingdoms, but some believed it referred to literal magical bloodlines. A fascinating interpretation, Professor Hyodo, Rias commented smoothly. I'm particularly interested in how such prophecies influenced political alliances during the early medieval period. An excellent question, Miss Gremory. Takashi's eyes flickered with recognition of her name, and perhaps her true nature. Historical records suggest several noble houses altered their marriage strategies based on divinatory predictions, attempting to either fulfill or prevent prophesied bloodline convergences. The scholarly discussion created a perfect cover for the undercurrent of supernatural communication. Issei studied his father's face, seeing him with new eyes, not merely as the supportive parent who'd encouraged his interests, but as a guardian deliberately preparing him for this awakening. When did you know? Issei asked quietly when Rias tactfully engaged Artoria in conversation about another exhibit. Giving father and son a moment of privacy. Takashi's expression softened. That you were special, from the moment we held you. That you were specifically the subject of ancient prophecy. Not until your 10th birthday, when you drew that sword from memory, the one you'd never seen in any book or film. Caliburn, Issei murmured. His father nodded. We contacted certain specialists then. Your mother's family has distant connections to magical organizations, though the talent had faded from their line generations ago. They confirmed our suspicions and helped us prepare appropriately. By enrolling me in kendo classes and feeding me Arthurian legends as bedtime stories. There was no accusation in Issei's tone, merely curiosity. By giving you the tools to understand your heritage when the time came, his father corrected gently. While ensuring you had as normal a childhood as possible. The specialists warned that premature knowledge could trigger dangerous manifestations. Like this morning's incident at school. Takashi's eyes widened slightly. So it's begun. It has, Issei confirmed. Though not quite how anyone expected, apparently. Before he could elaborate, the ambient lighting flickered. A subtle tremor ran through the building, causing the display cases to rattle almost imperceptibly. Most attendees attributed it to distant construction or subway vibrations. But Issei immediately recognized the sensation, magical pressure, similar to what had preceded the Chaos Spawn attack. Rias and Artoria rejoined them instantly, both having felt the disturbance. We should move to a less crowded location, Rias suggested quietly. Whatever's coming, civilian casualties would complicate matters. The restoration laboratory downstairs, Takashi suggested immediately. Understanding evident in his expression. It's secure and empty at this hour. I have access. They moved with purposeful casualness toward the staff elevator, Akashi swiping his ID card to grant them entry. As the doors closed, Issei noticed his mother watching from across the exhibition hall, concern visible in her eyes despite her calm demeanor. She gave him a small nod, permission, encouragement, farewell. He couldn't be certain. How bad? His father asked once the elevator began its descent. Difficult to determine, Artoria answered. But the ICAL signature differs from this morning's entities. This feels older, more focused as well, Rias added. The earlier attack seemed designed to flush you out, Issei. This energy feels like a directed test. The elevator doors opened to reveal a large laboratory filled with specialized equipment for artifact restoration. Workbenches held partially reconstructed pottery and fragile manuscripts in various stages of preservation. A separate area contained more robust items, metal weaponry, stone fragments, wooden structural elements, awaiting analysis or conservation. Takashi secured the door behind them. What can I do to help? Quote, stay back, Issei said immediately, concern for his father overriding everything else. If this is about me, I don't want you caught in the crossfire. I've been protecting you for 17 years, Takashi replied with unexpected firmness. I won't stop now. The best protection you can offer is information, Artoria interjected pragmatically. What else is in this exhibition that might be relevant to Issei's heritage? Anything with particular magical significance. The professor hesitated, then moved to a locked cabinet at the rear of the laboratory. There is one item that arrived just yesterday. It hasn't been catalogued for display yet. He unlocked the cabinet with a key from his pocket, removing a cloth-wrapped object approximately the length of his forearm. It was discovered during an archaeological dig near Glastonbury, supposedly inert, but given recent events. He unwrapped the cloth to reveal a scabbard, not the ornate master piece Issei had seen in the chamber of Avalon, but a rougher version, as though it were a prototype or partial manifestation of the true artifact. A fragment of Avalon, Artoria breathed, recognition flickering in her emerald eyes. How is this possible? The true Avalon exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously, Rias theorized. This could be a physical anchor point, allowing the artifact to maintain connection with our realm. Quote, the tremor returned, stronger this time. Dust filtered down from ceiling ventilation ducts as the magical pressure intensified. The air thickened, reality itself seeming to warp around the edges of perception. They're coming, Issei stated, the boosted gear materializing over his left arm without conscious summons. My father needs to leave. No time, Rias countered. Crimson energy gathering around her hands. The barrier's already forming. She was right. A shimmering distortion had encircled the laboratory, cutting them off from the outside world. Not a physical barrier but a dimensional one, a pocket reality where conflict could occur without affecting the primary universe. A dueling ground, Artoria identified, her clothing shimmering as casual attire transformed into gleaming silver armor materialized from magical energy. Someone has challenged you formally, Issei Hyodo. Who? He asked, but his answer came before either could respond. The air before them tore open. Not the jagged wound created by the chaos spawn but a precise vertical line that widened into a doorway of swirling indigo energy. Through this portal stepped a woman who immediately commanded attention through sheer presence alone. Tall and powerfully built, she moved with lethal grace that made even Artoria look rigid by comparison. Her hair fell in a cascade of purple so dark it appeared nearly black in certain light, framing a face of severe beauty. She wore fitted armor of an unfamiliar design, elements suggesting Celtic influence but incorporating materials no ancient smith could have worked. Most striking were her eyes, crimson like Rias's but infinitely older, containing centuries of witnessed combat and death. In her hands she carried twin spears that pulsed with crimson energy similar to but distinct from the Gremory magic. These weapons radiated such ancient power that even Ddraig stirred within the boosted gear, a low rumble of recognition emanating from the gauntlet. Scathach, the dragon identified, respect evident in his tone. The warrior queen of the land of shadows. Teacher of Ku Chulainn. Red Dragon Emperor, she acknowledged. Her voice carrying the faint lilt of ancient Ireland beneath perfect modern Japanese. It has been centuries since I encountered one of your hosts. Her penetrating gaze shifted to Artoria. King of Knights, your manifestation in this era was predicted, though not your alignment with the dragon. Queen of Shadows, Artoria returned formally, Caliburn materializing in her grip. Your presence is unexpected. The Celtic and Avalonian magical systems rarely intersect. Convergence changes everything, Scathach replied cryptically, her attention finally settling on Issei. So this is the prophesied vessel. Younger than I anticipated. Her expression revealed nothing of her thoughts as she assessed him. Show me your worth, boy. Caliburn demands a worthy wielder. Understanding D. This was no enemy attack but a test, a formal challenge from one of history's greatest warrior teachers. I barely understand these powers, Issei admitted, seeing no value in false bravado. I only awakened to them this morning. Truth. Good. Scathach nodded approvingly. Lies serve no purpose in combat. She twirled one spear in a casual movement so fast it blurred. Understanding comes through trial. Summon your sword. Issei glanced at Artoria, who gave a slight nod. Though her expression remained guarded, There was no fear in her posture, respect for Scathach, certainly, but not concern that the warrior queen intended lethal harm. He centered himself, reaching for the connection he'd felt that morning. Caliburn responded instantly, golden light coalescing into solid form in his right hand. The sword's weight felt perfect, its balance an extension of his own body. Good, Scathach approved. Now defend yourself. She moved with such explosive speed that Issei would have. He died instantly without his enhanced reflexes. As it was, he barely parried her first spear thrust, the impact sending shockwaves up his arm despite the boosted gear's protection. Her second spear came from an impossible angle, forcing him into a desperate evasion that left him off balance. Too slow, she commented, already repositioning for another attack. Your body hasn't integrated the dual powers yet. They compete rather than complement. She struck again, a flurry of spear thrusts too rapid to count. Issei blocked what he could and absorbed what he couldn't, the boosted gear's armor, preventing serious injury but not the jarring impact of each blow. He found himself driven backward across the laboratory, defensive rather than offensive, struggling to find any opening in her perfect form. The dragon gives you power. Scathach lectured even as she pressed her attack, but you channel it inefficiently. The knight gives you technique, but you haven't earned the muscle memory. Another thrust slipped past his guard, scoring a shallow cut across his ribs. Your mind knows what to do, but your body lags behind. Boost. Diedrag's voice echoed from the gauntlet, doubling Issei's capabilities. Power without control only hastens defeat, Scathach countered, somehow moving even faster to match his enhancement. She feinted left before striking from the right, a maneuver so aimlessly executed that Issei recognized the trap only as her spear slipped past Caliburn's guard. Instead of piercing his heart, however, the weapon stopped a millimeter from his chest. Dead, she pronounced flatly. First lesson. Before he could respond, she reset her position and attacked again from a completely different angle. This cycle repeated 5 times in rapid succession, each, det. H, followed by an immediate reset and new approach. By the 6th iteration, however, Issei began recognizing patterns in her movement, not flaws in her technique but subtle tells preceding certain attacks. When she launched the 7th sequence, he was ready. Instead of purely defensive reactions, he incorporated the predictive element, moving to counter her strike before it fully developed. For the first time, Caliburn met her spear in perfect opposition, golden light flaring against crimson energy. Scathach's eyes widened fractionally, the only indication of surprise from the ancient warrior. Better, she acknowledged, immediately adapting her approach to eliminate the pattern he'd identified. The combat continued, evolving from simple attack and defense into a complex dialogue of technique. With each exchange, Issei integrated more of what both bloodlines offered, the dragon's instinctive battle lust tempered by the knight's disciplined precision. He remained primarily defensive, but his movements became more economical, his counters more strategically placed. The boy learns quickly, Scathach commented to the observers, though her attacks never slowed. Faster than most immortals, let alone humans. He has 2 lifetimes of combat experience to draw upon, Artoria observed. The challenge is accessing that knowledge without being overwhelmed by it. Takashi watched from the sidelines, fascination overriding concern as he witnessed his son's transformation. The manuscripts mentioned accelerated adaptation as one of the convergence traits, he noted. Theoretical KN. Olage becoming practical skill through catalytic combat. Rias maintained a careful neutrality, though her analytical gaze missed nothing. The question remains whether his human physicality can channel such power without consequence. As if summoned by her words, Issei faltered. The competing magical systems within him suddenly clashed rather than cooperated, sending a jolt of dissonant energy through his nervous system. He staggered, Caliburn's golden light flickering as his concentration fractured. Scathach halted her attack immediately, stepping back with a thoughtful expression. Interesting. Your mortal frame reaches its limit while your magical capacity remains abundant. She lowered her spears. Enough for now. The test has yielded valuable data. Issei leaned on Caliburn, breathing heavily as the magical dissonance gradually subsided. Was I supposed to beat you? He asked between breaths. Scathach actually laughed, a sharp, rusty sound suggesting rare use. No mortal ha. defeated me in single combat for millennia, boy. Victory was never the objective. Then what was? To evaluate potential, she replied simply. To determine whether the prophecy deserves my attention. And does it? Artoria asked, armor dissolving back into casual clothing as the immediate threat passed. Scathach studied Issei with those ancient eyes. Perhaps. He lacks refinement but compensates with adaptability. The convergence manifests more strongly than predicted. She addressed Issei directly. You survived 17 exchanges with Guy Bold. Most gods cannot claim as much. Despite his exhaustion, Issei straightened at this assessment. What happens now? Now, Scathach said, spears vanishing as she crossed her arms, we determine whether you merit my instruction. Your instruction? Rias interjected, surprise evident in her tone. The Queen of Shadows hasn't taken a student since Cuchulain himself. Circumstances change, Scathach replied with a shrug. A mortality grows tedious without occasional diversions. Her expression grew more serious. Additionally, the convergence carries implications beyond Avalonian or Draconic interests. The Celtic powers have their own stake in this prophecy. The dimensional barrier surrounding the laboratory flickered, then stabilized at a lower intensity, no longer a combat arena but still separate from normal reality. We should continue this discussion elsewhere, Artoria suggested, glancing at Takashi. The professor has already been exposed to more than is strictly safe for an uninitiated human. I'm hardly uninitiated, Takashi protested mildly. My research has granted me certain perspectives on the supernatural world, even if I lack magical ability myself. Nevertheless, Rias agreed, a more appropriate venue would be beneficial. The Occult Research Club room at Kuo Academy has enhanced privacy wards. The Chamber of Avalon would be more secure, Artoria countered. Particularly if we're discussing matters of prophecy. The Land of Shadows would be safest of all, Scathach offered with a predatory smile, though few mortals return from such visits with sanity intact. I should speak with my mother before going anywhere. Issei interjected firmly. She deserves to know I'm safe, especially after what just happened. His simple, human concern seemed to catch the immortals by surprise. Our prize, a reminder that despite his extraordinary heritage, Issei remained grounded in normal relationships and responsibilities. Of course, Rias conceded. Professor, would you escort Issei upstairs to reassure his mother? We'll make arrangements to meet at the chamber in 1 hour. Takashi nodded, placing a supportive hand on his son's shoulder. Come, your mother has been preparing for this day longer than I have. She'll want to see you before you take your next steps. As father and son departed, the three supernatural women regarded each other with varying degrees of wariness. The Guile alliance of convenience formed during the immediate crisis now faced the reality of fundamentally different agendas. The boy shows promise, Scathach observed once they were alone. But his and limitations will become problematic as the convergence strengthens. His humanity is a strength, not a weakness, Artoria countered. The prophecy specifically requires human perspective to balance the inhuman powers involved. An interesting interpretation from one who struggled with her own humanity, Scathach noted with pointed precision. Did you not sacrifice your human understanding in pursuit of perfect kingship? Artoria Pendragon, the king of knights stiffened. My past errors provide valuable perspective on what the boy must avoid. Ladies, Rias interjected diplomatically. While your historical perspectives are fascinating, perhaps we should focus on immediate concerns. The manifestation of Caliburn and the awakening of the boosted gear simultaneously will attract attention from numerous factions. Issei requires protection and training before our enemies mobilize. Agreed, Artoria conceded. Though we may differ on methodologies, our immediate objectives align. Do they? Scathach challenged. The King of Knights seeks a worthy successor to Avalon's legacy. The Gremory heir pursues advantage for her devil faction. I seek a student worthy of my final teachings before this world ends. Our purposes merely intersect temporarily with the boy's nexus. Then let us make use of that intersection, Rias suggested pragmatically. Each of us offers knowledge and protection the others cannot provide. A temporary alliance benefits all, particularly Issei. The immortal warrior considered this, then nodded curtly. Acceptable, for now, but understand, devil, child, if the boy proves unworthy of the convergence power, I will end him myself. Prophecy or no, Such potential cannot be allowed to develop incorrectly. Your concern is noted, Artoria replied coldly. As is the implicit threat. The tension between them crackled like static electricity, centuries of ingrained opposition between their magical traditions resisting the proposed cooperation. Their mutual interest in Issei's development prevented outright hostility. We should prepare the chamber for his training, Artoria finally said, breaking the standoff. Certain artifacts will need to be activated if we're to properly assess his capabilities. I'll inform my brother of developments, Rias added. As Lucifer, Sears should be made aware of a potential new power emerging. His political protection could prove valuable. I must consult the shadows regarding certain prophecies, Scathach stated. Ancient texts that predate even Myrthan's predictions. She fixed both women with her penetrating gaze. Make no binding agreements with the boy until I return. His oath will carry more weight than either of you anticipate. With that cryptic warning, the warrior queen stepped head backward into a shadow that deepened unnaturally, enveloping her completely before returning to normal. Rias and Artoria exchanged glances, momentary allies united by the uncertainty of what they'd discovered in Issei Hyodo. Minori Hyodo had taken the revelations about her son's supernatural heritage with surprising equanimity. Rather than shock or disbelief, she had displayed the prophetical concern of a mother whose child faced dangerous but necessary challenges. Your father and I always knew this day would come, she explained as they sat in a quiet corner of the university cafe, away from curious ears. Though we hoped you might have a few more years of normal life first. You don't seem surprised by any of this, Issei observed, studying the woman who had raised him with such care. The prophecies, the powers, the supernatural beings suddenly appearing in our lives. A small, sad smile touched her lips. My family has always existed at the periphery of magical society, Issei. Not practitioners ourselves, but record keepers, observers. Generations ago, we were tasked with watching for signs of certain prophecies manifesting. And I was one of those signs. She nodded. When you were brought to us as an infant, certain birthmarks on your shoulder blades matched ancient descriptions perfectly, the dragon's wings in embryonic form. Your eyes would sometimes shift color when you experienced strong emotions, displaying both draconic slit pupils and the royal blue of Pendragon bloodline. You never told me, he said, not accusingly but with genuine curiosity. Would you have believed us? She asked gently. Or would you have thought your parents delusional? We decided that guiding you subtly toward your heritage would be more effective than burdening a child with impossible expectations. Issei considered this reasoning and found he couldn't fault it. What happens now? These beings, Artoria, Scathach, they talk about training me, about prophecies and convergence. My life as I knew it seems to be over. Minori reached across the table to take his hand. Your life isn't over, Issei. It's expanding. You'll always be our son, regardless of your supernatural heritage or prophesied destiny. Her expression grew more serious. But you do have responsibilities now that can't be ignored. Powers that must be mastered rather than suppressed. Did you know about the chamber? Beneath the school, she shook her head. We knew Kuo Academy was built on magically significant land. That's why we encouraged your enrollment when it became coeducational. But specific knowledge of Avalonian repositories was beyond our clearance level. The casual reference to clearance levels regarding his upbringing struck Issei as surreal, but he pushed forward with more pressing questions. These women, they all seem to want different things from me. How do I know who to trust? His mother's expression softened with pride. You've always had excellent judgment, Issei. Trust your instincts, both human and otherwise. Remember that even immortal beings have agendas and blind spots. She squeezed his hand. And know that you always have a home with us, regardless of what path you choose. The simple reassurance meant more than she could know. Amid the chaos of awakening powers and cosmic prophecies, the constancy of his parents' support provided an anchor to his humanity. I need to go, he said reluctantly. They're waiting for me at the chamber. Apparently, my formal training begins tonight. Minori nodded, releasing his hand. Your father prepared something for you. He's been holding it for years, waiting for this moment. She removed a small wooden box from her purse and slid it across the table. He said you'd understand its significance now. Issei opened the box carefully. Inside lay a medallion of unusual design, silver inlaid with gold, bearing the same intertwined dragon and sword motif he'd seen on the chamber door. The craftsmanship appeared ancient, yet the metal showed no tarnish or wear. "It came with you," his mother explained. "The only item accompanying you when you were brought to us. We were instructed to keep it until your powers manifested." As his fingers touched the medallion, a resonance thrummed through his awakened senses. The artifact recognized him, responding to both bloodlines flowing through his veins. When he lifted it from the box, the metal warmed against his palm, the engraved design briefly illuminating with the same golden crimson energy that manifested when he combined his powers. "Thank you," he said quietly, slipping the chain over his head. The medallion settled against his chest, its weight comforting rather than burdensome. "For everything, the normal childhood, the subtle preparation, the freedom to become myself before all this began. We love you, Issei," Minori replied simply. "That transcends prophecies and supernatural politics. Never forget that your humanity is as important as your heritage." With those words echoing in his mind, Issei left to meet his destiny, or at least the next complicated step toward it. The chamber of Avalon had transformed since his first visit that morning. What had appeared as a simple circular room with artifacts and bookshelves now revealed its true complexity. Additional doorways had appeared in the curved walls, led into spaces that shouldn't have physically fit beneath Kuo Academy. The round table remained the central feature, but its surface now displayed glowing runic patterns that shifted and realigned periodically. Artoria stood examining an ancient map spread across one section of the table, while Rias conversed quietly with a holographic projection of a man who bore a striking resemblance to her, clearly a relative. Though his power signature registered as vastly more potent to Issei's developing senses. Both women looked up as he entered, the medallion around his neck pulsing once as it interacted with the chamber's magical field. "The convergence key," Artoria identified, surprise evident in her tone. "We believed it lost centuries ago. It was given to my parents when I was brought to them as an infant," Issei explained. Fingering the medallion, "They were instructed to keep it until my powers awakened. This changes our approach significantly," Rias observed, dismissing the holographic communication with a gesture. "The key grants access to portions of Avalon otherwise sealed even to those with Pendragon blood." "What exactly is Avalon?" Issei asked, the question that had been building since his first encounter with the term. "I know it's King Arthur's scabbard, but you all speak of it as something more, a place, a concept, a power source." "All of those," Artoria confirmed, approaching him with newfound interest. "Avalon began as the scabbard crafted to house Caliburn, imbued with powerful healing magic from the Phi realms. But over time, it evolved beyond its physical form. As certain artifacts of immense magical significance sometimes do," Rias continued the explanation, "it developed a dimensional aspect, a pocket reality reflecting its essential nature. That realm became the true Avalon. The perfect kingdom that could never be achieved in the physical world. After my departure," Artoria added with careful phrasing, "Avalon the scabbard was lost. While Avalon the realm became increasingly difficult to access. The physical chamber we stand in now serves as a bridge point between dimensions, neither fully in this world nor entirely in Avalon itself." Issei absorbed this information, instinctively understanding its relevance to his dual nature. "And the convergence key allows controlled access between these realms," came Skathich's voice. "See as she materialized from the shadows near one of the newly appeared doorways. More importantly, it marks you as the prophesied heir regardless of bloodline verification." She approached, her yours assessment continuing with each step. "The key responds only to one who carries both essences in perfect potential balance. Previous attempts at artificial convergence failed because one aspect always dominated the other. Which explains why you've attracted such immediate attention from multiple factions," Rias noted. "The key's activation would have sent metaphysical ripples throughout the supernatural world." Speaking of attention, Artoria interjected, returning to the map spread across the round table, "We've identified multiple convergence points where barriers between our world and others have weakened since your awakening." Issei joined her at the table, recognizing a map of Japan overlaid with glowing symbols that made intuitive sense despite having never studied magical cartography. "These represent incursion risks," he stated with certainty born from his awakened knowledge. Places where entities might cross over from other realms. Artoria nodded approvingly. Correct. The convergence of powers has created resonance points at locations with historical or magical significance. We've already detected movement at 3 sites. A coalition of interests opposing the prophecy, Scathach elaborated. Joining them at the map. Traditional enemies have temporarily allied against the greater threat you represent. Threat? Issei questioned. I've barely begun to understand these powers. How am I threatening anyone? Your potential threatens everyone, Rias explained with diplomatic precision. The supernatural world maintains balance through opposition, angels versus devils. Dragons versus divine weapons, Eastern versus Western magical paradigms. Your existence suggests a unification that would fundamentally alter those dynamics. The prophecies speak of a ruler who transcends traditional boundaries, Artoria added. Many power structures prefer those boundaries firmly maintained. Issei studied the map more carefully, strategic assessment flowing naturally from his awakened bloodlines. These incursion points form a pattern, he observed. They're not random, they're creating a ritual circle with Kuo at its center. The 3 women exchange surprised glances at his immediate recognition of what would have taken others significant analysis to detect. He's right, Scathach confirmed, respect coloring her tone. A containment working, designed to isolate the convergence point and prevent the prophecy from spreading beyond local influence. How would you counter it? Artoria asked Issei, the question clearly a test. Without hesitation, he pointed to specific locations between the identified sites. Establish counterpoints here, and here, places with natural magical resonance that would disrupt their geometric precision. A triangle within their circle, creating interference patterns in the ritual energy. Precisely what I would recommend, Rias noted with evident surprise. The strategic mind of a king combined with a dragon's understanding of magical energetics. The boy learns quickly, Scathach acknowledged. But theoretical knowledge must become practical skill. Which brings us to the purpose of this gathering. She fixed Issei with her ancient gaze. Your formal training begins now. We've developed a regimen that addresses both aspects of your heritage, Artoria explained, waving a hand over the table. The map disappeared, replaced by a complex schedule written in glowing script. Combat training, magical theory, historical context, political education, and physical conditioning. An ambitious program, Rias added. Normally such training would require years, but circumstances demand acceleration. Because of these incursions, Issei guessed, studying the intensive schedule. Partially, Scathach confirmed, but also because your awakened powers have begun a transformation process that cannot be halted or slowed. Your human physiology is being reconstructed at the cellular level to accommodate the convergence energies. This revelation gave Issei pause. You mean I'm becoming something else? Not human. You were never entirely human, Artoria corrected gently. But yes, physical changes will accelerate now that both bloodlines have activated. The training is partly designed to ensure these changes proceed harmoniously rather than chaotically. Which is why you must begin immediately, Scathach stated, her tone brooking no argument. Tonight, you learn to consciously manifest both aspects of your power simultaneously without self-destruction. The blunt SS meant might have terrified Issei yesterday, but his awakened nature responded to the challenge with anticipation rather than fear. Where do we start? With the sword, Artoria answered, stepping B. Act to create space in the chamber's center. Summon Caliburn. Issei complied, finding the process easier than before. Golden light coalesced into the legendary blade, its weight and balance feeling increasingly natural in his grip. Now, Scathach instructed, manifest the boosted gear while maintaining Caliburn's form. This proved more challenging. As the draconic gauntlet materialized over his left arm, Caliburn's light wavered. The blade's substance threatening to dissipate as competing magical systems clashed within him. Focus, Artoria commanded. The sword and the dragon are not opposed in you, they are complementary aspects of a unified whole. Find the resonance point, Scathach added more specifically. The frequency where both energies harmonize rather than interfere. Issei closed his eyes, turning his awareness inward to the swirling energies within his core. He visualized them not as separate forces but as different expressions of the same fundamental power, like light refracting through a prism into distinct but related colors. Gradually, he felt the dissonance diminish. Rather than forcing the powers to coexist, he allowed them to find their natural alignment. NT, the dragon's raw might flowing into the knight's disciplined channeling. When he opened his eyes, Caliburn glowed with steady golden light in his right hand while the boosted gear remained fully materialized on his left arm. Well done, Artoria approved. Now maintain that balance while defending yourself. Without warning, she summoned Excalibur and launched a precisely controlled attack. Issei responded instinctively, Caliburn rising to parry while the boosted gear deflected a secondary strike from her armored gauntlet. Boost. Diedrag's voice echoed from the gauntlet, doubling Issei's capabilities. The sudden power surge threatened to disrupt his carefully maintained balance. Caliburn's light fluctuated as excess energy sought expression. Rather than fighting this instability, Issei directed the additional power into the sword, which absorbed it smoothly, its golden aura intensifying. Excellent adaptation, Scathach commented from the sideline. Now defend against multiple opponents. Shadowy duplicates of the warrior queen materialized around the chamber, each wielding spectral copies of her legendary spears. They attacked in perfect coordination, forcing Issei to respond to threats from all directions simultaneously. This training continued for hours, the challenges escalating as Issei demonstrated mastery of each level. Physical combat gave way to magical defa. NSE as Rias introduced controlled applications of destruction energy. Theoretical knowledge was tested through complex strategic scenarios projected across the round table. Historical context came Thr. Artoria's first-hand accounts of Camelot's rise and fall, contextualized by Scathach's even more ancient perspective. Throughout it all, Issei's body and mind adapted with unprecedented speed. Convergence of bloodlines accelerated his learning curve exponentially, ancient knowledge awakening as practical skill with each new challenge. What would have taken months to master in normal circumstances, he grasped in hours, not perfectly, but functionally. Enough, Scathach finally declared as Issei successfully countered a particularly complex magical attack sequence. The boy reaches his current threshold. Pushing further risks destabilization. Issei stood breathing heavily in the chamber's center, sweat soaking his clothing despite the room's comfortable temperature. Caliburn and the boosted gear remained manifested. Their energies now flowing harmoniously through his system, but fatigue pulled at his consciousness. You've progressed remarkably, Rias acknowledged, dispelling her destruction magic. Most sacred gear users require months to achieve stable manifestation, let alone integration with a second magical system. The convergence accelerates all aspects of his development, Artoria noted. Excalibur vanishing as she approached to inspect him more closely. His aura has already begun to stabilize into a unified pattern rather than competing signatures. A promising start, Scathach agreed with characteristic reserve. But physical training represents only one facet of necessary preparation. She gestured toward one of the newly appeared doorways. The NXT phase requires direct exposure to Avalon itself. Is that safe? Rias questioned. Even partial manifestations of Avalon have proven hazardous to unprepared visitors. The convergence key grants him access and protection. Artoria replied, and his draconic aspect provides resilience against phi influences that might overwhelm an ordinary human. Issei dismissed both manifestations, Caliburn and the boosted gear fading as he regained his breath. What exactly will I find through that door? A reflection of Avalon, Scathach explained. Not the true realm in its entirety, that remains. Sealed until certain conditions are met, but a liminal space between dimensions where aspects of Avalon's nature can be experienced and understood. It will help you comprehend what these powers truly represent, Artoria added. The sword is more than a weapon, just as the dragon is more than destructive force. Both embody philosophical principles that must be internalized. I'll remain here to monitor external conditions. Rias offered. The incursions we detected earlier remain active. Someone should maintain awareness of developments in our realm while you explore the other. Her Cal's suggestion highlighted the strategic value she brought to their unusual alliance. While Artoria and Scathach possessed greater combat experience and historical knowledge, Rias contributed politica. Awareness and contemporary magical understanding that complemented their ancient perspectives. A sound precaution, Artoria agreed. The chamber's defenses should prevent direct interference, but advanced warning of approaching threats would be beneficial. With that decided, the three approached the doorway Scathach had indicated. Unlike the chamber's main entrance, this portal bore no physical door, only an archway filled with swirling mist that obscured whatever lay beyond. The key will guide your passage, Artoria instructed. Keep it in contact with your skin at all times. Issei nodded, ensuring the medallion remained visible outside his shirt. He could feel it resonating with the mist-filled doorway, subtle vibrations suggesting recognition between magical constructs. One final warning, Scathach added as they prepared to cross the threshold. Time flows differently within Avalon's influence. What feels like hours there may be minutes here, or vice versa. Maintain awareness of this distortion to avoid disorientation upon return. With those cautionary words, they stepped into the mist together. Issei experienced a momentary sensation of passing through a permeable membrane, reality flexing around him before resolving into a landscape of breathtaking beauty and impossible geometry. They stood upon a hillside overlooking a valley where a crystalline lake reflected mountains that couldn't exist in Japan's geography. The sky above held both sun and stars simultaneously, illuminating the landscape with golden light that carried subtle undertones of silver and azure. In the distance, a castle of white stone rose from an island at the lake's center, its architecture blending elements of various historical periods into something transcendent rather than incongruous. Most striking was the quality of the air itself, not merely clean but somehow more real than the atmosphere of the normal world. Each breath felt significant, as though the oxygen carried information and energy beyond its basic molecular composition. The halfway realm, Artoria identified, her appearance subtly altered by the environment. Her modern clothing had shifted to a regal blue gown while maintaining practical elements that wouldn't impede movement if combat became necessary. Neither fully Avalon nor entirely separate from it. A construct designed for transition and preparation, Scathach elaborated. Her own appearance similarly affected. Her armor had taken on more ceremonial aspects while losing none of its functional protection. Those who would eventually enter true Avalon must first acclimate to its nature here. Issei looked down at himself, unsurprised to find his clothing transformed as well. He now wore a tunic of deep crimson overlaid with golden armor elements that incorporated draconic motifs alongside knightly symbols. The convergence key had shifted position, now centered on his chest as part of the armor's design rather than hanging as a separate medallion. I feel different, he observed, noting changes beyond the superficial. His thoughts seemed clearer, connections forming more readily between concepts. His senses extended beyond normal parameters, perceiving aspects of his surroundings that would normally remain hidden. More complete somehow. The halfway realm reveals your potential rather than your current state, Artoria explained. What you experience here is a preview of what the convergence will eventually manifest in the physical world. Assuming you survive the transformation, Scathach added pragmatically. Many, with great potential, have been consumed by powers they couldn't properly integrate. They began walking toward the distant castle, following a path that shimmered with ambient magic. As they traveled, Issei noticed impossible transitions in the landscape, areas where seasons changed between steps, where architectural styles from different eras coexisted in single structures, where physical laws bent without breaking. This place operates on symbolic rather than literal logic, he observed, understanding flowing from his awakened knowledge. It's organizing itself according to narrative principles rather than physical ones. Precisely, Artoria confirmed, approval evident in her tone. Avalon exists as much in conceptual space as physical reality. The perfect kingdom cannot be constrained by ordinary limitations. The convergence you represent bridges these domains, Scathach continued. Dragon power exists primarily in physical reality, raw energy affecting material substance. GHTLY virtues operate in conceptual space, principles manifesting through worthy vessels. Your unique nature harmonizes these traditionally separate systems. As they approached the lake, Issei noticed figures moving beneath its surface, humanoid forms that weren't quite human, observing their passage with curious eyes that held ancient intelligence. The ladies' handmaidens, Artoria identified. Quote, 5 entities that maintain Avalon's connection to water sources throughout the world. They're watching me specifically, Issei noted, feeling their focused attention. Of course, Scathach replied matter-of-factly. You represent a fundamental change to magical constants that have remained stable for millennia. Everything connected to the old systems will naturally take interest in such a catalyst. When they reached the lakeshore, a stone causeway rose from beneath the water, creating a path to the island castle. As they crossed this bridge, Issei felt subtle tests brushing against his consciousness, not hostile probes but evaluative touches, as though the realm itself assessed his worthiness. The castle gates opened without visible attendants as they approached. Within the courtyard stood a single object that immediately commanded attention, a stone pedestal holding a scabbard identical to the one Issei had seen in the chamber of Avalon, yet somehow more real, more present. The true form of Avalon, Artoria murmured, reverence evident in her tone, are as close to its true form as can manifest in this transitional space. I thought the scabbard was lost, Issei said, recalling her earlier explanation. Its physical manifestation was scattered, she clarified. But its essential nature persists throughout all dimensions, anchored by key fragments like the one your father discovered. Approach it, Scathach instructed. The purpose of this journey is direct connection with your knightly inheritance. Issei stepped forward, drawn toward the scabbard by an inexorable pull that resonated through his Pendragon bloodline. As he neared the pedestal, Avalon began to glow with golden light that matched Caliburn's aura perfectly. Place your hand upon it, Artoria directed. But be prepared, the experience can be overwhelming. Taking a deep breath, Issei reached out and touched the scabbard. Immediately, his consciousness expanded beyond normal parameters. Information flooded his mind, not as disjointed facts but as coherent understanding, contextualizing everything he'd experienced since his awakening. He saw Camelot as it truly was, beyond legends and romanticized tales. He witnessed Artoria's reign, her triumphs and struggles, the ideals she pursued and the human cost of that pursuit. He experienced the creation of Avalon by 5 hands and its purpose as both protection and symbol. Most significantly, he understood its connection to the concept of the perfect kingdom, not a physical place but an ideal toward which worthy rulers strived. Simultaneously, he felt Deidrag's presence within him responding to this knowledge. The dragon's essence interacted with Avalon's power not as an intrusion but as a complementary force. Where Avalon represented perfect stability and protection, draconic energy embodied necessary change and transformation. Neither complete without the other, like inhalation and exhalation in a single breath. The balance, he whispered, understanding flowing through him. That's what the prophecy truly means, not merely combining powers but reconciling opposing principles. Yes, Artoria confirmed, watching him closely. The perfect kingdom requires both protection and adaptation, tradition and innovation, stability and growth. Opposing forces in harmony rather than conflict. A balance few have achieved in any realm, Scathach noted. Gods and dragons alike tend toward extremes rather than equilibrium. As this understanding crystallized, Avalon's glow intensified. The scabbard lifted from the pedestal, hovering before Issei at chest height. Without conscious decision, he reached out with both hands, left marked with the boosted gear's dormant form, right bearing the subtle resonance of Caliburn. The scabbard moved into his grasp, its substance simultaneously solid and ethereal. As his fingers closed around it, golden light enveloped his form entirely. For a moment that stretched beyond normal time perception, Issei existed in perfect communion with both aspects of his heritage, dragon and knight unified in purpose rather than opposition. When the light receded, Avalon had vanished, yet Issei cool. D still feel its presence integrated into his magical core alongside Deidrag's essence. Not a physical possession but an internal transformation, fundamental principles incorporated into his developing power. It accepted him, Artoria stated, surprise and satisfaction mingling in her tone. More completely than I anticipated at this stage. The convergence progresses faster than prophesied, Scathach observed, her ancient eyes evaluating the changes in Issei's aura. The catalyst has been fully activated. Issei felt simultaneously exhausted and energized, his mind processing implications faster than conscious thought could articulate. What happens now? He asked, the question becoming a refrain in his rapidly transforming life. Before either could answer, the castle around them trembled. The perfect sky above darkened with unnatural clouds, disrupting the harmony of sun and stars. Throughout the halfway realm, discordant energy pulsed like interference in a previously clear signal. We're under attack, Artoria realized, Excalibur materializing in her grip. Not here, but in the physical world. The chamber's defenses are being tested. Rias, Issei said immediately, cons. RN for his ally overriding other considerations. We must return, Scathach agreed, her twin spears appearing in her hands. The trial by steel continues sooner than anticipated. They moved quickly back toward the causeway. The previously tranquil lake now churning with agitated currents. The handmaidens had vanished, retreating to deeper waters as the realm's stability faltered. As they reached the shore, the path that had led them to the castle began shifting, landscapes rearranging as the halfway realm responded to external disruption. The connection weakens, Artoria warned as they hurried along the destabilizing path. If the chamber falls, our return passage may collapse. Then we create our own passage, Issei stated with newfound confidence. The boosted gear manifested over his left arm while Caliburn appeared in his right, both responding to his will with unprecedented synchronization. Boost. As his power doubled, he felt Avalon's essence within him responding to the enhancement, stabilizing what would previously have been chaotic energy. With perfect clarity, he perceived the dimensional structure around them, not merely sensing it but understanding how it connected to the physical world. There, he identified, pointing Caliburn toward what appeared to be an ordinary section of hillside. The barrier is thinnest at that convergence point. He's right, SC. Athich confirmed after a moment's assessment. The boy perceives dimensional wavelengths that should be beyond mortal comprehension. They redirected toward the location Issei had indicated. As they approached, he raised Caliburn, channeling combined energy through the legendary blade. The sword's golden light took on multicolored highlights as Avalon's essence and Dedrag's power flowed through the unified conduit. Stand back, he warned his companions before bringing the sword down in a precise arc. Reality itself parted along the blade's path, creating an opening that bypassed the conventional transition point. Through this tear, they could see the chamber of Avalon, and the battle raging within its circular confines. Rias stood at the center near the round table, crimson destruction. Energy forming a protective barrier around her position. Surrounding this shield, multiple attackers pressed their assault, humanoid figures in ornate armor bearing sigils of various supernatural factions. Most concerning was a towering entity at their center, its form obscured by swirling darkness that absorbed light rather than merely blocking it. The observer has returned, Artoria identified grimly. With reinforcements from multiple pantheons. A coalition against the convergence, Scathach added, readying her spears. Precisely as we anticipated, though sooner than expected. Without hesitation, Issei leapt through the portal he'd created, Caliburn leading his charge into the chaotic melee. His companions followed immediately, flanking him as they emerged into the physical dimension. Their arrival shifted the battle's momentum instantly. One of the armored attackers turned toward the unexpected reinforcements, recognition and alarm visible through his ornate helmet. The prophecy vessel returns, he shouted in a language Issei shouldn't have understood but somehow did, an ancient form of Celtic that predated written history. The warrior queen accompanies him. And the once and future king. Added another attacker, this one bearing Norse runic patterns on his armor. The alliance was not exaggerated. The observer's darkness swirled more violently as its attention shifted to the newcomers. The boy accesses Avalon already, it hissed in its multi-layered voice. The acceleration exceeds acceptable parameters. Your parameters are irrelevant, Issei replied. Caliburn's golden light intensifying as he advanced. The sword's aura pushed back against the observer's darkness, creating a visible boundary between opposing forces. This chamber stands under my protection now. Bold claims from an incomplete convergence, the observer countered. Your transformation has barely begun. You lack the capacity to enforce such declarations. He doesn't stand alone, Rias interjected. Her destruction barrier expanding to include her allies. The House of Gremory acknowledges Issei Hyodo's authority regarding Avalon's legacy. As does the Celtic court, Scathach added. Her status as Queen of Shadows carrying immense weight among supernatural entities. And Camelot's lineage, Artoria completed the triumvirate of support, Excalibur's holy light complementing Caliburn's golden aura. The combined acknowledgement of three major factions constitutes binding recognition under supernatural accords. The observer's darkness receded slightly, its coalition forces exchanging uncertain glances. The invocation of formal recognition protocols had shifted the engagement from simple combat to something with diplomatic implications. The old powers recognized no such accords. The observer declared, though its confidence seemed diminished. Yet you operate through agents who do, Scathach countered shrewdly. Your Norse and Celtic proxies are bound by their pantheons, treaty obligations. Regardless of your exemption, political tension now overlaid the physical standoff, magical energy crackling between opposed forces while supernatural law created constraints around potential actions. Issei sensed the strategic opportunity this presented, a chance to resolve the immediate threat without further bloodshed. I offer terms, he stated clearly, Caliburn steady in his grip. Withdraw your forces now, and this incursion will be classified as diplomatic inquiry rather than hostile action. Remain, and 3 major factions will formally recognize your coalition as enemies of established order. The elegant simplicity of his proposal, simultaneously offering face-saving retreat while threatening serious consequences, demonstrated the strategic mind developing within him. Not merely combat instinct but political acumen, drawing from both bloodlines' heritage of leadership. The vessel employs statecraft already, observed one of the armored figures. This one bearing Egyptian hieroglyphs across his breastplate. Perhaps the prophecies merit further consideration before opposition. Silence, the observer commanded, though the unity of its coalition visibly wavered. The convergence threatens cosmic stability. Short-term political considerations are irrelevant against existential risk. If the risk were truly existential, Artoria countered, you would have deployed more significant forces. This exploratory attack reveals your uncertainty regarding the prophecy's true meaning. The observer's darkness contracted, its multi-layered voice taking on a colder tone. Clever interpretation, King of Knights. But incomplete. We test boundaries rather than committing fully. This does not indicate the absence of existential concern, merely prudent resource allocation. Throughout this exchange, Issei maintained perfect focus, the newly integrated aspects of his power operating in harmony rather than competition. Avalon's essence stabilized the enormous energy channeled through his system, while Ddrake's power amplified his physical capabilities beyond normal human limitations. Most importantly, his mind remained clear despite the supernatural pressure surrounding him, strategic assessment flowing unimpeded by fear or uncertainty. Final warning, he stated, raising Caliburn to guard position. Withdraw or be classified as hostiles under supernatural accords. For a tense moment, the outcome remained uncertain. Then, with visible reluctance, the armored figures began stepping back from Rias's destruction barrier. This confrontation is merely postponed, the observer declared as its coalition forces retreated. The fundamental incompatibility between converged power and established cosmic order remains unresolved. Then we will resolve it through proper channels, Rias responded diplomatically. The upcoming faction summit provides an appropriate venue for discussing prophecy implications. All interested parties may present their concerns there. Quote, this reference to established supernatural protocols further undermined the observer's position. By acknowledging legitimate avenues for addressing concerns, Rias emphasized the irregular nature of the current incursion. With obvious displeasure, the observer's darkness contracted until it resembled a humanoid silhouette rather than an amorphous cloud. Very well, we shall observe the proper protocols, for now. Its attention fixed on Issei with disturbing intensity. But understand this, vessel of convergence, your development will not proceed unopposed. The old powers have witnessed the rise and fall of countless, prophesied, entities. Your potential means nothing until fully realized. With those ominous words, the observer and its coalition forces departed, not through conventional movement but through simultaneous dimensional folding that collapsed the space they occupied, leaving the chamber empty save for Issei and his allies. The sudden absence of immediate threat allowed tension to dissipate gradually. Rias lowered her destruction barrier with a relieved sigh, while Artoria and Scathach maintained vigilant postures for several moments longer before dismissing their weapons. A diplomatic victory, Rias noted with professional approval. Well handled, Issei. Your proposed terms gave them a face-saving exit while establishing your legitimate standing. The political instinct of a king, Artoria observed, combined with a dragon's understanding of power dynamics. and practical application of theoretical knowledge gained in Avalon, Scathach added, studying him with increased interest. The integration progresses faster than anticipated. Issei dismissed Caliburn, feeling the strain of maintaining heightened power now that immediate danger had passed. They'll be back, he stated with certainty. This was just an opening move in a longer game. Undoubtedly, Rias agreed, but you've gained valuable time and formal recognition from 3 major factions. That carries significant weight in supernatural politics. We should use this reprieve wisely, Artoria suggested, approaching the round table where several artifacts had been disturbed during the confrontation. Continue your training while preparing for the faction summit. What exactly is this summit? Issei asked, helping restore order to the chamber. A gathering of representatives from all major supernatural factions, Rias explained. Held every decade to address cross-pantheon concerns and update accords as needed. This year's summit convenes in 3 weeks, fortuitous timing given recent developments. The convergence will be a central topic, Scathach predicted. Your presence will be required, both as subject of discussion and as claimant to unprecedented magical standing. The prospect of facing an assembly of supernatural powers after less than a month of training might have terrified Issei before his awakening. Now, however, he recognized both the challenge and opportunity such a gathering presented. Then we have 3 weeks to prepare, he concluded pragmatically. To develop my abilities enough to withstand scrutiny from beings who've existed for millennia. An ambitious timeline, Artoria acknowledged. But not impossible given your accelerated development. The integration of Avalon's essence provides stability that would normally require years of training to achieve. Which means we can focus on practical application rather than basic control, Scathach added, her tactical mind already formulating training regimens. Combat techniques, strategic thinking, diplomatic protocols, skills that will prove necessary at the summit. Don't forget the political dimension, Rias contributed. I can harangue introductions to key devil representatives beforehand, establishing alliances that will strengthen your position. As they discussed preparation plans, Issei felt a strange sense of rightness despite the overwhelming nature of his situation. The paths previously stretching before him, ordinary university, perhaps a career following his father's academic footsteps, had vanished overnight, replaced by responsibilities and powers beyond normal human comprehension. Yet rather than mourning this lost normalcy, he found himself embracing the new reality with surprising ease. One question remains unaddressed, he said as their planning reached a natural pause. What exactly does the prophecy predict? Everyone refers to the convergence as something momentous, but no one has explained what it's supposed to accomplish. The 3 supernatural women exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them that spoke volumes about the complexity of his question. Different factions interpret the prophecy differently. Rias finally explained, which explains the varied reactions to your awakening. Traditional dragon factions believe the convergence heralds a new age of magical sovereignty. With boundaries between pantheons dissolved under unified leadership, Artoria elaborated. Avalonian adherents view it as the return of the perfect kingdom in modern form. The Celtic traditions speak of a balance bringer who reconciles opposing forces without eliminating their essential nature, Scathach added. A mediator rather than conqueror. And the old powers, Issei pressed, recalling the observers' ominous warnings. They fear change to established cosmic order, Rias answered carefully. Their existence depends on maintaining certain fundamental separations between magical systems. Your potential to bridge those divisions represents existential threat from their perspective. Issei absorbed these varied interpretations, recognizing the weight of expectation now resting on his shoulders. Not merely learning to control unprecedented power, but navigating complex political landscapes shaped by prophecies he hadn't even known existed days ago. So my first task is surviving long enough to understand my own significance, he concluded with grim humor. An accurate assessment, Scathach approved. Though survival requires more than mere defense. You must establish yourself as a power worthy of respect, which means demonstrating both capability and restraint. A lesson many rulers learn too late, Artoria added, momentary shadows crossing her expression. Power without wisdom leads to destruction, regardless of intentions. The round table between them pulsed with subtle light, responding to their discussion of kingship and rule. Issei placed his palm against its ancient surface. Feeling the names inscribed there, knights who had served under Artoria's reign, men and women who had dedicated their lives to an ideal larger than themselves. I never asked for this responsibility, he said quietly, but neither did many who bore it well. His gaze moved from Artoria to Scathach to Rias, 3 women who each carried tremendous burdens of leadership in their own spheres. I won't pretend to have the wisdom or experience you all possess, but I'm willing to learn. A promising start, Rias acknowledged with a smile. Recognizing the limits of your knowledge demonstrates more wisdom than many immortal beings manage to acquire in centuries. Indeed, Artoria agreed, and you have advantages I lacked during my reign, allies who speak truth rather than what they believe you wish to hear. Though don't mistake our current alignment for unconditional support, Scathach cautioned pragmatically. Each of us serves interests beyond your personal development. Temporary alliance does not erase fundamental responsibilities to our respective domains. I understand, Issei assured her. And I wouldn't want blind loyalty. The prophecy speaks of balance that requires honest perspective from different viewpoints, not unquestioning agreement. This response earned approving nods from all 3, though for notably different reasons reflecting their individual values. Artoria respecting his understanding of leadership principles, Scathach appreciating his pragmatic realism, and Rias valuing his diplomatic instinct. Your training resumes tomorrow, Artoria declared, bringing their discussion back to immediate concerns. We'll establish a rotation system, each providing instruction in our areas of expertise. Combat and magical conditioning from me, Scathach specified, including accelerated physical adaptation techniques to help your human form accommodate increasing power levels. Political education and contemporary supernatural context from me, Rias added, including introduction to key alliance opportunities before the summit. And I will oversee integration of your knightly heritage with draconic abilities, Artoria completed. Including proper use of Avalon's essence now incorporated into your magical core. The comprehensive program they outlined would have seemed impossibly demanding before his awakening. Now, however, Issei recognized both the necessity and his own enhanced capacity to absorb such intensive instruction. When do we begin? He asked simply. Rest tonight, Scathach instructed. Your body requires recovery time to process today's developments, particularly the integration of Avalon's essence. I will collect you at dawn tomorrow. Your parents should be informed of these arrangements, Rias noted practically. Though perhaps not every detail, knowledge of certain supernatural elements carries risks for uninitiated humans, regardless of prior exposure. I'll speak with them, Issei agreed. They deserve to understand why I'll be largely absent for the next 3 weeks. With their immediate plans established, the group prepared to depart the chamber. As they approached the exit, however, Artoria held Issei back momentarily. One matter remains unaddressed, she said quietly. The convergence key you wear, it's more significant than you yet realize. How so? It doesn't merely grant access to Avalonian realms, she explained. It serves as both identifier and focus for your developing powers. More importantly, it contains safeguards designed to prevent premature manifestation of convergence abilities. Safeguards. The full potential of united bloodlines could destroy you if accessed too quickly, she clarified. The key regulates energy flow, allowing gradual adaptation rather than catastrophic transformation. Keep it with you at all times. Its absence would remove crucial protections during this vulnerable phase. The warning carried sufficient gravity to emphasize the continuing danger of his situation. Despite successful first steps, Issei remained in a precarious position, balanced between enormous potential and the very real risk of being consumed by powers beyond human capacity to contain. I understand, he assured her, his hand unconsciously rising to touch the medallion against his chest. I won't remove it. With that final caution, they rejoined the others and departed the chamber together, 3 supernatural powers and 1 awakening convergence, bound by prophecy and necessity into an alliance that would soon reshape the magical world. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Eastern Winds. Dawn painted Kuo Academy's grounds in watercolor hues of amber and rose, the early morning stillness broken only by the rhythmic clash of weapons. Within a specially warded training area behind the old school building, Issei moved through complex combat forms, Caliburn gleaming in his right hand while the boosted gear's crimson light illuminated his left. Across from him, Scathach attacked with methodical precision, her twin spears creating patterns of deadly geometry that tested his developing reflexes and tactical awareness. Unlike their first encounter, Issei now anticipated her movements with growing confidence, his body adapting to superhuman speeds that would have been impossible weeks earlier. Better, the immortal warrior acknowledged as he successfully parried a particularly complex sequence. Your muscle memory begins to match your theoretical knowledge. Boost. Diedrag's voice resonated from the gauntlet, energy surging through Issei's system. With enhanced speed, he shifted from defense to controlled offense, Caliburn tracing golden arcs that forced even the legendary Queen of Shadows to adjust her positioning. Not merely reacting now but predicting, creating openings rather than merely exploiting them. Enough, Scathach declared after he successfully executed a combination that nearly breached her guard. With casual grace, she stepped back, spears vanishing as she assessed his progress. Your physical adaptation accelerates beyond projected parameters. The convergence stabilizes your cellular structure during power manifestation. 2 weeks had transformed Issei in ways both subtle and profound. Though still recognizably human, his physiology had evolved to accommodate the dual energies flowing through his system. Muscle density increased without corresponding bulk, reflexes sharpened beyond normal human limitations, senses expanded to perceive magical emanations that ordinary consciousness filtered out. Most significantly, his mind processed information with unprecedented clarity, strategic assessment flowing naturally from both draconic instinct and nightly training. The meditatio and techniques you taught me help maintain balance, Issei acknowledged, dismissing both manifestations as they concluded the morning's training. Though I still feel the dragon's power pushing for dominance during extended combat. As it should, Scathach replied matter-of-factly. The draconic aspect represents necessary aggression and expansive potential. Without it, the knightly virtues would become static, resistant to necessary evolution. She studied him with those ancient eyes that had evaluated countless warriors across millennia. The challenge isn't suppressing either aspect but harmonizing their essential natures. Issei nodded, understanding flowing from experiences that transcended verbal instruction. 2 weeks of intensive training under 3 extraordinary teachers had provided not merely combat techniques but philosophical perspective on his unprecedented condition. Rias mentioned a development regarding the faction summit, he said as they gathered their equipment. Something about a preliminary meeting in Kyoto. Yes, a significant alteration to established protocols. Scathach's expression revealed nothing of her thoughts regarding this change. The Eastern, supernatural factions have requested direct involvement in convergence discussions rather than traditional observer status. That's unexpected, Issei noted, strategic implications immediately apparent. Eastern and Western magical systems typically maintain separation in supernatural politics. Until a prophecy emerges that potentially affects both equally, came Rias's voice as she approached from the school building. Unlike her usual school uniform, she wore formal attire appropriate for diplomatic functions, a tailored crimson suit that complemented her hair while projecting sophisticated authority. The Eastern representative specifically requested your presence at preliminary negotiations, she continued, joining them at the training area's boundary. Particularly the Kyoto Yukai faction. Yasaka moves more quickly than anticipated, Scathach observed with mild disapproval. Her intelligence network proves efficient as always. Who is Yasaka? Issei asked, noting the obvious significance this name carried for both women. The leader of Japan's most powerful Yukai coalition, Rias explained. A nine-tailed fox of extraordinary ability and political acumen. Her territory encompasses Kyoto's spiritual heart, and her influence extends throughout Eastern supernatural society. She maintains the boundary between mundane Japan and its spiritual counterpart, Scathach added. A role somewhat analogous to Avalon's relationship with Britain, though manifesting through different magical principles. The strategic implications registered immediately in Issei's developing political awareness. And she specifically requested my presence. That suggests she sees potential advantage in early alliance with the convergence. Precisely, Rias confirmed with approving recognition of his analysis, which presents both opportunity and complication. Eastern support would significantly strengthen your position at the main summit, but premature alignment might alien 8 neutral factions still assessing the prophecy's implications. When would this preliminary meeting occur? Issei asked, already calculating adjustments to his training schedule. Tomorrow, Rias answered. A formal invitation arrived this morning through supernatural channels. Artoria is consulting the Chamber's archives regarding proper diplomatic protocols for interactions with Yukai leadership. Tomorrow. The accelerated timeline suggested urgency beyond normal diplomatic maneuvering. Something's happened, Issei concluded. Something that makes Yasaka seek immediate contact rather than waiting for the summit. Perceptive, Scathach acknowledged. Recent disturbances in ley line configurations throughout Japan suggest unusual magical activity. Kyoto, as a nexus point between human and spiritual realms, would be particularly sensitive to such fluctuations. The convergence creates ripples throughout interconnected magical systems, Rias elaborated. Your awakening Lickle, why triggered responses in Eastern power structures that parallel Western reactions. Issei considered this information, the strategic portion of his mind, increasingly influenced by both draconic cunning and nightly tactical training, evaluating potential approaches. We should accept the invitation, he decided after a moment's consideration. Regardless of specific motives, establishing direct communication with Eastern factions expands our potential alliance network. At minimum, we gain information about how the convergence affects magical systems beyond Western paradigms. A sound assessment, Rias approved. I've already prepared appropriate responses. We'll depart for Kyoto this afternoon. Yourself, myself, Artoria, and Scathach as your advisory council. A formidable delegation, Scathach noted with dry humor. The once and future king, a devil princess, the queen of shadows, and the prophesied convergence. Yasaka clearly understands the value of proper diplomatic recognition. The meeting concluded with practical arrangements, transportation details, appropriate attire for formal Yukai interactions, strategic briefings on Eastern supernatural politics. As preparations advanced throughout the morning, Issei found himself appreciating the complementary strengths his unusual advisory council provided. Rias's contemporary political knowledge, Artoria's historical perspective, Scathach's unmatched tactical experience. Before departing, he visited his parents to explain the unexpected journey. Though he had maintained regular contact throughout his intensive training period, his reduced presence at home represented yet another adjustment to their family dynamic. Kyoto has significant spiritual importance in Japanese tradition, his father noted when Issei explained the invitation. If Eastern magical systems are acknowledging your position, that suggests the convergence transcends traditional boundaries between supernatural paradigms. Be cautious with Yukai diplomatic protocols, his mother added with surprising specific knowledge. Their concept of formal agreements often incorporates binding magical components rather than mere political promises. Words have power in their tradition beyond Western magical contracts. Her insight reminded Issei that his parents' knowledge extended beyond what they had initially revealed, peripheral awareness of supernatural society that had prepared them to raise a child of prophecy. Not practitioners themselves but informed observers with generations of accumulated wisdom. I'll remember, he assured her. Rias is preparing comprehensive briefing materials on appropriate interactions. Trust your instincts as well as your advisors, his father counseled. The convergence within you bridges Eastern and Western magical principles in ways unprecedented in recorded history. You may perceive connections and opportunities others miss due to traditional limitations. The advice resonated with Issei's enveloping understanding of his unique position. Not merely combining separate powers but representing a fundamental reconciliation between magical systems traditionally viewed as distinct. The implications extended far beyond personal ability into cosmic reorganization of supernatural constants. That afternoon, their delegation departed via magical transportation, a specialized teleportation circle. Established between major supernatural territories that bypassed conventional travel limitations. The experience differed from Issei's previous encounters with dimensional transitions, the energy nature distinctly devil in origin rather than draconic or Avalonian. They materialized within a traditional Japanese garden of breathtaking beauty, every element placed with precision that transcended mere aesthetic consideration. Issei's enhanced senses immediately detected the underlying magical purpose of the arrangement. Plants, stones, and water features positioned to channel and purify Itual energy flowing through converging ley lines. Impressive, Artoria noted, her regal bearing unchanged despite the cultural transition from Western to Eastern environment. She had opted for formal attire that balanced her Avalonian heritage with respect for Japanese tradition, a midnight blue ensemble incorporating subtle design elements that acknowledge both without compromising either. Garden serves as both welcome and initial assessment. Standard protocol for high-level Yukai diplomatic functions, Rias explained, her own attire similarly balanced between Western formal and Eastern respectful. The Garden's response to our magical signatures provides their security forces with preliminary evaluation of our intentions and capabilities. A sophisticated system, Issei observed, feeling the Garden's gentle magical probes interacting with his dual nature. Unlike Western magical examinations, which typically function through direct analysis, this approach operated through a harmonic resonance, observing how a visitor's energy affected established patterns rather than actively scanning their composition. Scathach moved with characteristic vigilance, her expression revealing nothing as ancient Celtic power interacted with Japanese spiritual energetics. Though she had exchanged her battle attire for more diplomatically appropriate clothing, her warrior's readiness remained evident in every controlled movement. The Garden recognizes you, she noted to Issei. Interesting, considering you've never visited this territory before. Before he could respond to this observation, attendants appeared on the Garden path. Yukai in human form, distinguished by subtle non-human characteristics that most mortals would dismiss as costume or imagination. They bowed with practiced synchronization, the lead attendant addressing their party in flawless formal Japanese. Honored guests, Lady Yusaka welcomes you to Kyoto's Sacred Heart. Please follow us to the reception hall, where refreshments await your arrival. They proceeded along stone paths that wound through increasingly significant spiritual landmarks, ancient shrines nestled among towering trees, purificatio fountains flowing with water that glimmered with subtle enchantment, stone lanterns housing flames that burned with colors no ordinary fire could produce. Throughout their journey, Issei noted added, Ional security measures integrated seamlessly into the traditional environment, guardian statues whose eyes tracked their movement, barrier formations disguised as decorative ground patterns, sentinel spirits maintaining vigilant observation from branch and shadow. The reception hall itself represented a masterpiece of traditional Japanese architecture elevated through supernatural craftsmanship. Timbers harvested from forests never touched by human development supported a roof adorned with protective wards disguised as decorative elements. Sliding doors of paper and wood incorporated barrier spells capable of withstanding significant magical assault, while appearing delicate and artistic to casual observation. Within this carefully prepared space waited their host, and Issei's first encounter with Eastern supernatural royalty. Yusaka sat upon a slightly elevated platform, her human form embodying classical Japanese beauty with an otherworldly quality that transcended mere physical appearance. Golden eyes observed them with intelligence honed through centuries of rule, while 9 magnificent fox tails arranged behind her in a ceremonial display of rank and power. Her kimono, rned with sakura blossoms against midnight blue silk, contained subtle magical enhancements visible only to those with supernatural perception. Beside her sat a smaller figure, a young girl who shared Yusaka's golden eyes and blonde hair. Though with only a single tail visible behind her, despite her youth, she carried herself with dignity befitting her status, observing the Western visitors with unconcealed curiosity. Welcome to Kyoto, Yusaka greeted them, her voice melodic yet carrying unmistakable authority. We are honored to receive such distinguished representatives from Western factions. Her gaze settled on Issei with particular interest, especially the convergence vessel whose awakening reverberates through magical systems across continents. We appreciate your hospitality, the opportunity for preliminary discussions before the formal summit, Rias responded with appropriate diplomatic formality, taking lead as the most politically experienced member of their delegati. On regarding contemporary supernatural protocols. Introductions proceeded according to careful etiquette, each visitor presented with proper acknowledgement of their significance. When Issei's turn came, Yusaka's attention intensified, those golden eyes examining him with penetrating assessment that seemed to reach beyond physical form to the dual energies flowing through his system. Issei Hyodo, she acknowledged, bearer of the Red Dragon Emperor's legacy and heir to Avalon's throne. Your emergence was foretold in Eastern prophecies as well as Western, though interpreted through different symbolic frameworks. This revelation, that his awakening had been anticipated through Eastern divinatory traditions independently of Western prophecies, added new dimension to the convergence's significance. Not merely a Western supernatural event with global implications but a truly cross-cultural phenomenon predicted through separate magical systems. I'm still learning the full scope of these responsibilities. Issei responded with honest humility that nevertheless conveyed self-assurance rather than uncertainty. The opportunity to understand Eastern perspectives on the Convergence Reaper. Issei's valuable expansion of my knowledge. Refreshingly direct, Yusaka approved with a slight smile. Western diplomatic protocols often favor elaborate verbal dancing before addressing substantive matters. She gestured gracefully, initiating the serving of traditional tea through an elaborate ceremony performed by Yukai attendants. Let us dispense with unnecessary formalities. Time grows short for all supernatural factions. You perceive the accelerating timeline as well, Artoria noted, accepting tea with perfect adherence to Japanese custom despite her Western origins. The convergence progresses faster than initially prophesied. Indeed, Yusaka confirmed, the Eastern ley line system shows unprecedented fluctuations. Barriers between human and spiritual realms thin in locations historically stable for centuries. These changes began precisely when Issei Hyodo awakened to his dual heritage. Such correlation suggests direct causation, Scathach observed, her ancient Yes, meeting Yusaka's across the ceremonial space, immortal powers assessing each other with mutual recognition of capability. Has the Eastern divinatory tradition identified specific outcomes from these fluctuations? Multiple potential futures, each dependent on how the convergence develops, Yusaka answered, her attention returning to Issei. Which is why your presence was requested before the formal summit. Eastern and Western supernatural communities have maintained separation for millennia, productive cooperation but distinct governance. The convergence potentially redefines that fundamental arrangement. The diplomatic implication became immediately clear to Issei. Yusaka sought information about his intentions regarding Eastern supernatural autonomy before committing to a position at the main summit. Political prudence masquerading as preliminary discussion. The convergence represents balance rather than conquest, he stated, drawing from his developing understanding of his unique role. Harmony between traditionally separate systems rather than subordination of one to another. Noble sentiments, Yusaka acknowledged. Though history provides abundant examples of well-intentioned powers whose actions ultimately contradicted their stated principles. A fair observation, Issei conceded. Which is why I seek understanding before action, perspectives from traditions beyond my initial exposure to better comprehend what balance truly requires in practice rather than theory. His response seemed to satisfy her immediate concern, tension in the formal atmosphere subtly diminishing. The young girl beside Yusaka, clearly her daughter, though she hadn't been formally introduced, watched Issei with increasing interest, her expression suggesting approval of his diplomatic approach. Perhaps practical demonstration would prove beneficial, Yusaka suggested after a thoughtful pause. Kyoto contains locations where Eastern and Western magical principles naturally converge, remnants of historical interactions between supernatural communities. Visiting such sites might provide insight regarding how your unique nature interacts with established power confluences. An excellent suggestion, Rias agreed. Recognizing the diplomatic opening, theoretical discussion has limitations that direct experience might overcome. My daughter Kuno will guide your exploration, Yusaka decided, finally acknowledging the young fox beside her. As heir to Kyoto's guardianship, she has intimate knowledge of the city's spiritual geography. Additionally, her perspective represents the next generation of Eastern supernatural leadership, those who will live with the convergence's long-term consequences. The young fox straightened with evident pride at this responsibility. Despite her youth, appearing perhaps 12 or 13 in human equivalent, Kuno projected confidence befitting her royal status. It would be my honor to introduce our distinguished guests to Kyoto's sacred sites. She declared with formal dignity that occasionally revealed youthful enthusiasm beneath practiced protocol. Particularly locations where historical interaction between Eastern and Western supernatural powers has created unique magical harmonics. Arrangements were quickly established. A guided tour beginning that evening after appropriate rest, continuing through significant locations over the following day. Beneath the surface courtesy, Issei recognized the strategic value of this proposal. Yusaka gained opportunity to observe him interacting with Eastern power sources while maintaining the appearance of generous hospitality. Simultaneously, their delegation received access to locations normally restricted to outsiders, providing valuable intelligence about Eastern magical infrastructure. As their formal reception concluded, attendants guided them to private accommodations prepared within the compound, traditional Japanese rooms enhanced with protective enchantments. ND comfort spells appropriate for distinguished supernatural visitors. Once settled in their separate quarters, Issei's advisory council reconvened in a private garden area to discuss initial impressions. Yusaka's invitation represents significant political opportunity, Rias began, her analytical mind already processing strategic implications. Eastern supernatural factions rarely initiate dire court involvement in Western prophetic manifestations. Their interest suggests the convergence affects fundamental magical constants beyond traditional boundaries. The nine-tailed fox observes more than she reveals, Scathach noted with characteristic wariness. Her concern extends beyond political realignment to something more fundamental about the convergence's nature. The barrier between mundane and spiritual realms weakens, Artoria added thoughtfully, similar to fluctuations we've observed in Western territories, but manifesting through different magical mechanisms. The convergence appears to affect the very structure of reality regardless of which supernatural paradigm governs a particular region. Issei considered their observations, his own strategic assessment incorporating elements from each perspective. Yusaka offers alliance opportunity, but with caution appropriate to her responsibilities as Kyoto's guardian. She needs to understand how the convergence might affect a stern magical stability before committing to any position. A reasonable approach, Rias acknowledged. Though her method, having you interact directly with Eastern power nexuses, carries certain risks. Your developing abilities remain partially unpredictable, particularly when encountering unfamiliar magical systems. The risk extends both directions, Scathach pointed out pragmatically. Seeing a still stabilizing convergence vessel to established power sources could trigger unintended reactions. Yusaka accepts this possibility, suggesting her concern outweighs conventional caution. She believes her territory's defense is sufficient to contain any potential disruption, Artoria countered. The Yukai protective systems we've observed incorporate sophisticated containment protocols beyond typical Western approaches. Their discussion continued, analyzing implications from diplomatic, tactical, and historical perspectives. Throughout this exchange, Issei noted how his council's diverse expertise provided comprehensive assessment no single advisor could have offered. Rias understanding contemporary political nuance, Artoria providing historical context for supernatural interactions. Scathach evaluating tactical dimensions beyond political considerations. As evening approached, Kuno arrived to begin their guided exploration of Kyoto's supernatural landmarks. The young fox had exchanged formal court attire for more practical clothing appropriate for moving through the city, though still incorporating elements that identified her royal status to those with eyes to see. Our first destination bridges human and Yukai realms, she explained as they departed the compound through an ornate gate that served as both physical and magical transition point. Fushimi Inar, Shrine represents the most famous manifestation of fox spirit worship in Japan, but beneath the tourist attraction lies the true power nexus, a convergence of ley lines that connects directly to ancient fox territories. Their journey took them through Kyoto's mundane streets, Kuno proving an enthusiastic and knowledgeable guide to both conventional history and its supernatural counterpart. Inari humans perceived their group as typical tourists, complex illusion magic ensuring they attracted no undue attention despite their distinctive appearances. Humans maintain fascinating relations, hips with supernatural entities in Eastern tradition, Issei observed as they approached the famous shrine with its thousands of vermilion torii gates. Veneration and fear intermingled rather than strictly separated. Eastern philosophy recognizes the essential unity of seemingly opposed forces, Kuno explained with scholarly precision that occasionally revealed her age through enthusiastic delivery. Yin and yang, material and spiritual, human and Yukai, all represent complementary aspects of existence rather than fundamentally separate categories. A perspective that aligns naturally with the convergence concept. Artoria noted. Western supernatural traditions often emphasize distinction and hierarchy where Eastern approaches prioritize harmonious integration. Though such generalizations oversimplify complex cultural differences, Rias added diplomatically, both traditions contain diverse philosophical approaches that resist easy categorization. Kuno led them beyond areas accessible to ordinary visitors, activating hidden pathways that connected physical shrine grounds to their spiritual counterpart. As they crossed this threshold, reality shifted subtly, colors intensifying, sounds acquiring additional harmonics, the very air becoming richer with magical essence. "Welcome to Inari's true shrine," the young fox announced proudly as the spiritual dimension fully manifested around them. Few Westerners receive permission to enter these grounds. The difference between mundane shrine and spiritual reality proved dramatic. Where human visitors perceived beauty, but conventional religious architecture, the supernatural dimension revealed a complex that extended impossibly in all directions. Massive trees older than human civilization supported structures had incorporated living wood into architectural designs no human engineer could have conceived. Fox spirits of varying power levels moved purposefully throughout the complex, maintaining ritual observances that sustained barriers between worlds. Most impressive was the central power nexus, a carefully maintained convergence of ley lines channeled through an arrangement of sacred objects and living guardians. Unlike Western magical focal points, which typically contained energy within defined boundaries, this system operated through continuous flow, power constantly moving through purification cycles that maintained perfect equilibrium between accumulation and dispersal. "Extraordinary," Issei breathed, his dual nature responding to this unfamiliar magical arrangement. Both draconic and GHTLY aspects of his power recognized the sophisticated design underlying apparent organic development. The entire system functions as unified ecosystem rather than constructed apparatus. Eastern and Western magical philosophies often diverge most significantly regarding control versus harmony, Kuno explained, clearly pleased by his appreciation. Where Western traditions typically seek to harness or direct natural energies, Eastern approaches more frequently emphasize alignment with existing flows. As Issei observed the complex spiritual machinery maintaining Kyoto's supernatural equilibrium, he felt his own dual nature responding in unexpected ways. The dragon aspect recognized raw power flowing through ancient channels, while his knightly heritage appreciated the disciplined harmony maintaining balance between potentially destructive forces. Most interestingly, the convergence between these perspectives revealed connections neither tradition fully acknowledged independently. The underlying principles share more commonality than surface appearances suggest, he noted, insights flowing from his unique perspective. Western systems prioritize structure while Eastern emphasizes flow, but both ultimately serve similar purposes through different methods. A perceptive observation, came Yusaka's voice as the nine-tailed fox materialized beside them, her appearance suggesting she had been observing their exploration from the beginning. Few visitors recognize the fundamental similarities beneath philosophical distinctions. Her arrival shifted the dynamic immediately, Kuno deferring to her mother's authority while their delegation acknowledged the Yukai leader's presence with appropriate respect. Unlike their formal reception, Yusaka now appeared in attire better suited for practical matters. Though no less regal in its design, the convergence allows you to perceive connections typically obscured by traditional separation, she continued, studying Issei with renewed interest. Such perspective suggests potential beyond mere combination of separate powers. Before he could respond to this assessment, a tremor passed through the spiritual complex, subtle but unmistakable to those attuned to supernatural energetics. Yusaka stiffened, her nine tails fanning outward as she immediately accessed information through her connection to Kyoto's defensive network. "Boundary breach," she announced, formal diplomatic courtesy instantly replaced by commanding authority. Multiple incursions detected at secondary shrines throughout the city. Coordinated attack, Scathich identified immediately, warrior instincts assessing strategic implications. Targeting peripheral defenses to divide response forces. While potentially creating distraction from primary objective, Artoria added, her tactical mind reaching similar conclusions. Yusaka's golden eyes narrowed as she processed incoming information through mystical connections invisible to others. 7 simultaneous incursions. Pattern suggests systematic testing of defenses rather than full assault. Her gaze shifted to their delegation with sudden suspicion. Convenient timing, given Western visitors with unprecedented access to restricted areas. If you suggest our involvement, Rias began, diplomatic training maintaining measured response despite the accusation. I suggest nothing without evidence, Yusaka interrupted. Practicality overriding diplomatic protocol, but acknowledge that attacks coinciding with your arrival merits consideration of potential connection. Or attest that our presence was anticipated by parties opposed to potential alliance between Eastern and Western factions, Issei countered, strategic assessment flowing naturally from his developing abilities. The timing serves those who benefit from continued separation between supernatural communities. His analysis gave Yusaka momentary pause, her expression indicating reassessment of initial suspicions. A reasonable alternative interpretation. Regardless, immediate response takes priority over theoretical attribution. She turned to her daughter with clear authority. Kuno, escort Argue STS back to compound protection while I coordinate defense forces. Mother, I can help. The young fox began with evident desire to prove herself. Your responsibility is diplomatic security, Yusaka cut her off firmly but not unkindly. Ensuring the Convergence vessel's safety represents greater strategic priority than additional combat capability in defensive operations. Though clearly disappointed, Kuno accepted this command with appropriate respect for chain of authority. Yes, Mother, I will ensure their safe return to protected grounds. We offer assistance rather than requiring protection, Scathach stated, her ancient power stirring visibly around her form. The Queen of Shadows does not shelter while battle unfolds. Nor does the King of Knights, Artoria added, regal authority underlying her measured tone. Our capabilities would strengthen your defensive position significantly. And the House of Gremory stands with its allies, Rias declared, crimson energy manifesting around her hands as she prepared for potential combat. Their unified offer, representatives of three major Western supernatural powers volunteering assistance to Eastern counterparts, created historic precedent that transcended immediate tactical considerations. Such cross-faction cooperation during active threat response contradicted centuries of careful separation between magical communities. Yusaka recognized the significance instantly, her expression revealing calculation of both immediate practical benefits and longer-term diplomatic implications. After momentary consideration, she nodded sharply. Accepted. Coordinated response provides practical advantage while demonstrating sincere alliance potential. Her attention shifted to Issei. The Convergence vessel should accompany Kuno to secure location. Your developing abilities represent unknowable variable in established combat protocols. The suggestion, reasonable from tactical perspective but problematic for his developing leadership position, placed Issei in delicate diplomatic territory. Accepting would acknowledge his lesser combat experience compared to immortal warriors like Scathach and Artoria, but refusing I'd appear as reckless pride rather than strategic necessity. I appreciate your concern, he responded carefully, but my unique perspective may prove valuable precisely because it integrates traditionally separate magical paradigms. Additionally, my protective capabilities specifically regarding your daughter likely exceed conventional defenses given the Convergence's demonstrated effect on opposing supernatural forces. His diplomatic response, acknowledging her authority while presenting logical counter-argument, impressed both Yusaka and his own advisors, judging by subtle expressions of approval. More importantly, it positioned him as Kuno's protector rather than fellow evacuee, maintaining dignity appropriate to his prophesied status. A reasonable assessment, Yusaka conceded. Very well. You will accompany Kuno to the central shrine while remaining outside primary combat operations. Your advisors may join our defense forces at these coordinates. She created glowing symbols indicating strategic positions throughout Kyoto's spiritual geography. We depart immediately. Within moments, their unified response activated. Yusaka vanished in flash of golden light, teleportee. To coordinate defense operations directly. Scathach, Artoria and Rias each acknowledged their assigned positions before utilizing their respective transportation methods to reach designated coordinates, shadow stepping, Avalonian translocation, and devil teleportation circles demonstrating the diverse capabilities their alliance offered. Left with Kuno, Issei immediately shifted to appropriate protective stance. Not merely physical positioning but magical awareness extending beyond immediate surroundings to monitor approaching threats. The boosted gear manifested over his left arm while Caliburn remained dormant but accessible in his right, providing balanced options for defense without unnecessary power display that might attract additional attention. This way, Kuno directed, her youthful enthusiasm tempered by clear understanding of their serious situation. The central shrine contains our strongest protective barriers and direct connection to Kyoto's foundational ley lines. They moved through spiritual pathways that connected sacred sites beneath normal human perception, dimensional shortcuts that allowed rapid traversal between physically distant locations throughout the city. Kuno navigated these passages with innate familiarity, her fox nature attuned to the network through both training and inherited connection to Kyoto's spiritual infrastructure. These attacks are unusual, she explained as they traveled, providing tactical intelligence that revealed sophisticated understanding beyond her apparent age. Our barriers detect specific resonance patterns in He intrusion magic, neither Eastern nor Western in traditional classification but something that incorporates elements of both. Hybrid methodology suggests deliberate adaptation to target Kyoto specifically, Issei noted. Strategic assessment incorporating this new information, possibly developed in response to your mother's interest in the convergence. You believe these attacks target our potential alliance rather than separate objectives. The timing suggests connection, he confirmed. Multiple factions benefit from continued separation between Eastern and Western supernatural communities. The convergence threatens traditional boundaries that maintain current power distributions. As they approached the central shrine, an ancient structure representing Kyoto's spiritual heart, Issei's enhanced senses detected anomalous energy patterns ahead. Unlike the coordinated attacks occurring at peripheral locations, this disturbance manifested directly at their destination, the supposedly secure fallback position. Kuno, he said quietly, halting their progress before they emerged from the dimensional pathway. The central shrine's defenses have been compromised. The young fox's eyes widened in alarm, her spiritual awareness extending to verify his assessment. Impossible. The central barriers incorporate protection layers established by the first nine-tailed fox empress. No outside force could breach them without triggering catastrophic response protocols. Unless the breach originated from within, Issei concluded, pieces aligning in his strategic analysis. The distributed attacks serve as distraction while primary objective targets the central shrine itself, likely by entity with pre-existing access authorization. Betrayal within our court. Kuno's expression reflected momentary disbelief before hardening into determination appropriate to her royal heritage. We must alert Mother immediately. Communications may be compromised if internal security is involved, Issei cautioned. We need visual confirmation before alerting defense forces. Redistributing resources based on potentially false information could worsen the strategic situation. Though early torn between immediate warning and tactical prudence, Kuno recognized the logic in his approach. There's an observation point that allows monitoring central shrine operations without entering main defensive perimeter. We can verify the situation without exposing ourselves. She led him through secondary pathway to elevated position overlooking the central shrine complex. From this vantage point, the situation became immediately clear, and confirmed Issei's worst suspicions. Within the supposedly secure heart of Kyoto's spiritual defenses, multiple figures in Yukai court attire surrounded a central ritual formation. Their activities clearly focused on systematic dismantling of protective enchantments rather than defending against external threat. Most concerning was the figure directing these operations, a senior court official Issei recognized from their earlier formal reception. Minister Takehiko, Kuno whispered, horror and betrayal evident in her voice. My mother's chief diplomatic advisor for over a century. Why would he compromise our defenses during active attack? The timing suggests coordination with external forces, Issei analyzed, accessing strategic assessment capabilities that flowed from his dual heritage. Peripheral attacks divide defensive resources while trusted insider dismantles central protections. Before they could develop response plan, the situation deteriorated further. A dimensional tear appeared within the central shrine, not standard teleportation but forcible breach between realms. Through this unstable portal emerged a figure Issei recognized with immediate concern, the observer, its darkness-shrouded form materializing within Kyoto's spiritual heart. The old powers, he identified, understanding the strategic significance instantly. They oppose Eastern and Western supernatural cooperation regarding the convergence. We must warn Mother, Kuno insisted, no longer willing to delay notification despite potential communications vulnerability. Agreed, but secure channel only. Issei's protective instincts, both draconic and knightly aspects in rare perfect alignment, focused entirely on ensuring the young fox is safe. Eddie while addressing the strategic threat. Can you establish direct connection to Yasaka without utilizing standard court protocols that Takehiko might monitor? Kuno nodded, removing a small jade pendant from within her clothing. Blood connection bypasses formal networks. This allows direct communication between family members regardless of distance or intervening barriers. As she activated this private channel, Issei continued monitoring the increasingly dangerous situation below. The observer appeared to be directing final stages of a complex ritual that targeted the shrine's foundation. Ono ley line connections, not merely compromising current defenses but potentially destabilizing Kyoto's entire supernatural infrastructure. Mother is returning immediately with primary defense forces, Kuno reported after establishing connection. But dimensional interference from the ritual slows translocation. They may not arrive before the central nexus is compromised. Issei assessed their options with ruthless efficiency. Strategic mind evaluating potential approaches against limited timeframe. Direct confrontation against the observer and multiple traders presented significant risk, particularly with responsibility for Kuno's safety. However, allowing the ritual's completion threatened catastrophic damage to Kyoto's spiritual foundation, and by extension, stability of Eastern's supernatural territory during critical pre-summit period. We need to disrupt their ritual without engaging in direct combat, he concluded, Caliburn materializing in his right hand while the boosted gear remained active on his left. Delaying action until reinforcements arrive rather than decisive engagement. The purification channels, Kuno suggested, tactical intelligence impressive despite her youth. They connect to all major power conduits throughout the shrine. Introducing counteractive energy would temporarily destabilize the ritual without permanently damaging our infrastructure. Perfect, Issei approved, immediately recognizing the strategic advantage her suggestion offered. I can channel convergence energy through these systems to create interference patterns in their working. This observation point connects directly to maintenance access for the purification network, Kuno explained, moving toward concealed panel disguised within traditional architectural elements. Court members rarely utilize these secondary systems, focusing instead on primary ritual spaces. She revealed hidden passage leading to technical aspects of the shrine's magical infrastructure. The spiritual equivalent of maintenance tunnels allowing access to fundamental systems without disrupting ceremonial operations in main chambers. Unlike the ornate ritual spaces above, these functional areas emphasized practical efficiency through designs that maximized energy flow while minimizing maintenance requirements. The primary distribution node, Kuno identified as they reached Junctio, endpoint where multiple crystalline conduits converged. From here, energy patterns propagate throughout the entire shrine complex. Issei immediately understood how this system could serve their objective. By introducing specific energy signature at this distribution point, they could create interference patterns that would disrupt the traders' ritual without causing permanent damage to Kyoto's spiritual infrastructure. I'll need to calibrate carefully, he explained, assessing the crystalline network with his uniquely integrated perspective. Too much power risks structural damage to the network itself. Too little won't generate sufficient interference to disrupt their working. Our systems normally reject foreign magical signatures, Kuno cautioned. The purification channels automatically filter external energies to maintain internal harmony. The convergence may bypass that limitation, Issei theorized, strategic mind identifying potential advantage in his unique nature. Quote, not strictly Eastern or Western but integrating elements of both magical paradigms. He placed his hands on the central distribution crystal, simultaneously accessing both aspects of his developing power. Unlike previous manifestations focused on combat application, this required subtle harmonization, the dragon's raw energy tempered by knightly precision, creating balanced output that could act with Eastern magical infrastructure without triggering rejection protocols. Boost, he whispered, D-Drag's power flowing through his system in carefully controlled measure. The crystalline network responded immediately, not with defensive rejection but receptive integration. The convergence energy flowed into distribution channels, creating rippling interference patterns that propagated through out the shrine's magical circulatory system. Above them, they heard exclamations of surprise and alarm as the sabotage ritual encountered unexpected resistance. "It's working," Kuno confirmed. Our spiritual awareness monitoring effects throughout the complex. Their casting patterns destabilize without structural damage to our foundational systems. Through their maintenance access, they sue. LD hear the observer's multi-layered voice raised in frustration. Convergence interference detected. The vessel approaches. Accelerate final sequence before reinforcements arrive. They adapt quickly, Issei noted with concern, feeling the opposing ritual adjusting to incorporate countermeasures against his disruption attempt. The observer possesses greater experience with convergence energetics than anticipated. Mother arrives soon, Kuno assured him, monitoring her direct connection to Yasaka. Defense forces overcome dimensional interference through alternative approach vectors. Quote, "We need stronger disruption to maintain advantage until reinforcements arrive," Issei decided, strategic assessment indicating necessity despite increased risk. Kuno, move back from the distribution node. I'm increasing power output significantly. The young fox complied immediately, demonstrating trust in his judgment despite their brief acquaintance. As she established safer position, Issei Yuli engaged both aspects of his convergence nature, Caliburn's golden light merging with the boosted gear's crimson energy as he channeled combined power into the shrine's distribution network. Boost, boost, boost. D-Drag's voice echoed through the maintenance chamber as draconic energy amplified exponentially. The crystalline conduits illuminated with unprecedented brilliance as convergence P.O.R. flooded through previously separate magical systems. Above them, the observer's ritual collapsed entirely, carefully constructed magical structures disintegrating under interference patterns that specifically targeted connections between Eastern and Western magical components. Remarkable application, came Scathach's voice as the immortal warrior materialized from shadows near their position. You identified the hybrid nature of their working and exploited fundamental incompatibility with true convergence energy. Strategic disruption rather than direct confrontation, Artoria added. Appearing through Avalonian translocation alongside Rias's devil teleportation circle. Excellent tactical decision given your responsibility for the princess's safety. The defensive perimeter is secured, Rias reported. Her formal attire showing minimal evidence of combat despite active participation in Kyoto's defense. Yasaka neutralizes remaining peripheral incursions while establishing containment around the central shrine. Their arrival confirms successful coordination between Eastern and Western supernatural forces, unprecedented cooperation that demonstrated potential alliance benefits beyond theoretical diplomatic advantage. More importantly for immediate concerns, it brought experienced combat capability to their position just as the observer launched counteroffensive. The maintenance access exploded inward as directed force shattered traditional concealment enchantments. Through this newly created opening poured corrupted Yukai guards, court officials whose spiritual signatures showed evidence of external manipulation overriding natural loyalty to Kyoto's legitimate authority. Protect the princess, Issei directed, immediately establishing defensive position between approaching threats and Kuno. I'll maintain disruption field against the observer's ritual. His advisors responded with seamless coordination that demonstrated developing trust beyond formal alliance. Scathach engaged the lead attackers with non-lethal precision, her legendary spears striking pressure points that neutralized opponents without permanent injury, recognizing these weren't willing traitors but manipulated assets. Artoria established secondary defensive perimeter, Excalibur's holy light creating barrier against spiritual corruption that might otherwise spread through proximity. Rias provided strategic support through precisely calculated destruction magic that systematically eliminated enemy advantages while preserving critical infrastructure. Through this coordinated defense, Issei maintained his connection to the distribution network, convergence energy continuing to disrupt the observer's attempts to compromise Kyoto's spiritual foundation. The unique balance he achieved. Dragon power providing necessary intensity while knightly precision ensured controlled application. demonstrated practical implementation of theoretical potential his advisors had identified during training. The battle reached critical juncture when Yusaka herself arrived, nine tails radiating golden energy that immediately established dominance within her sovereign territory. Her esprit, Seijin, upon seeing Western allies defending her daughter and kingdom's spiritual heart, registered momentary surprise before settling into fierce approval. "The traitors are contained," she announced, golden eyes blazing with controlled fury. "But the external entity must be neutralized before permanent damage occurs to our foundational systems. The observer cannot be destroyed through conventional means," Artoria cautioned, Caliburn maintaining protective barrier around their position. "Its existence transcends physical manifestation within any single realm. But it can be banished," Scathach added, ancient knowledge informing her assessment. "Forced retreat to native dimensional plane through sufficient application of counteractive energy. The convergence provides necessary counterbalance to its fundamental nature," Rias theorized, analytical mind identifying strategic application for Issei's unique abilities. "Where the observer represents primordial chaos seeking destruction of established order, the convergence embodies harmonious integration of previously separate systems. Understanding flowed between them with remarkable efficiency, for supernatural powers from TRA. Additionally, separate traditions reaching shared strategic conclusion through complementary perspectives." Yusaka turned to Issei with new appreciation for his potential contribution. "The central altar provides direct access to Kyoto's foundational ley line convergence," she explained, setting aside lingering diplomatic caution in face of immediate threat. "Combined application of our powers thrug. This nexus could generate sufficient banishment force. The convergence allows me to interface with Eastern magical infrastructure despite Western origin," Issei confirmed, already formulating implementation approach based on his experience with the distribution network. "With your guidance regarding proper access protocols, we can establish synchronized counter-ritual. Their coordinated response developed with impressive efficiency, Yusaka providing essential knowledge of Kyoto's spiritual architecture, Scathach contributing ritual structures from ancient Celtic tradition that specifically targeted chaos entities. Artoria offering Avalonian protective formations that stabilized combined working, and Rias establishing communication links that maintained tactical awareness throughout the operation." At the ritual's center stood Issei, convergence energy flowing through his uniquely balanced nature into Kyoto's foundational systems. Unlike the observer's attempt to compromise Eastern magical infrastructure through artificial hybridization of separate traditions, his approach achieved genuine integration. Dragon and Knight, East and West, protection and transformation unified rather than merely combined. The observer recognized the existential threat this unprecedented cooperation represented, its darkness coalescing into concentrated assault against their working. "This alliance violates cosmic separation principles," its multi-layered voice resonated throughout the shrine complex. "Eastern and Western supernatural domains must maintain fundamental distinction to preserve reality's structural integrity. Your definition of necessary separation represents outdated cosmic model," Yusaka countered, nine tails channeling purified spiritual energy into their combined ritual. "Evolution requires periodic reassessment of fundamental assumptions. The convergence doesn't destroy distinction but transcends artificial limitation," Artoria added, Excalibur's holy light, creating protective matrix around their working. "Unity through diversity rather than enforced separation. The old powers cling to established order because they lack imagination regarding superior alternatives," Scathach declared, her ancient magic establishing temporal anchors that prevented the observer from utilizing dimensional slippage to escape their banishment ritual. "Change inevitably disrupts established power structures." Rias completed their unified philosophical response. "Your opposition reflects self-preservation rather than cosmic necessity. Through this coordinated work, 5 distinct supernatural traditions temporarily unified through shared purpose, their banishment ritual reached critical threshold. Convergence energy flowing through Issei created resonance patterns specifically calibrated to negate the observer's manifestation within Eastern spiritual territory. With howling fury that transcended conventional sound, the entity fought against increasing banishment pressure. Reality itself warped around its struggling form as fundamental cosmic principles contested for dominance. For tense moments, the outcome remained uncertain, established order battling G. Evolutionary potential with reality itself as battleground. Then, with sudden clarity, Issei perceived the final necessary component. Not merely opposing the observer's chaos with combined order, B. Ut incorporating transformation principle that acknowledged necessity for controlled evolution within cosmic systems. The convergence represented not static unification but dynamic balance, continuous integration that maintained essential distinctions while allowing previously impossible harmonization. Boost. Diedrag's voice echoed with unprecedented resonance as Issei channeled this conceptual breakthrough into practical application. The observer's manifestation collapsed inward, dimensional anchors dissolving as banishment force overcame its resistance. With final multi-layered declaration, this confrontation merely postpones inevitable cosmic correction. The entity vanished from Kyoto's spiritual heart, leaving behind rapidly healing dimensional distortions. Silence descended upon The central shrine as their combined ritual concluded. 5 supernatural powers from traditionally separate traditions stood united through successfully coordinated response to shared threat. Beyond immediate tactical victory, this cooperation demonstrated unprecedented potential for broader alliance crossing historical boundaries between magical communities. Kyoto owes significant debt to Western allies, Yusaka acknowledged formally. Golden eyes meeting each of them with sincere appreciation. Particularly to the convergence vessel whose unique abilities proved essential to preserving our spiritual foundation. Cooperation benefited all participants. Issei responded diplomatically, recognizing the historic significance of their successful joint operation. Eastern and Western Supernat. Ural communities share fundamental interest in balanced cosmic evolution rather than stagnation or chaos. Mother. Kuno's voice interrupted further diplomatic exchange as the young fox rushed forward to embrace Yusaka. Despite formal protocols that typically governed royal behavior in public settings, the nine-tailed empress returned her daughter's embrace with evident relief and affection. Quote, "You remain safe through direct threat to our central shrine," Yusaka noted with pride as well as maternal concern. And contributed tactical intelligence that proved crucial to successful defense. Issei protected me while developing counter-strategy against the traitors. Ritual, Kuno explained, her admiring glance toward him revealing developing hero worship beneath formal acknowledgement. Quote, "His convergence abilities integrated with our purification network despite its rejection protocols against foreign magical signatures." This technical observation, delivered with scholarly precision had momentarily overshadowed her youth, highlighted perhaps the most significant discovery from their confrontation with the observer. Beyond combat application or political alliance, the convergence demonstrated potential for fundamental integration between previously incompatible magical systems at structural rather than merely superficial level. A discovery with profound implications beyond immediate tactical advantage, Yusaka noted, her analytical mind clearly processing strategic applications. The convergence enables genuine interaction between Eastern and Western magical infrastructure, without destructive compromise to either system's essential nature. Precisely what the old powers fear, Scathach observed with ancient wisdom that contextualized current events within longer historical perspective. Not destruction of established order but evolution beyond artificial limitations they've maintained for millennia. Which explains their coordinated opposition across traditionally separate supernatural territories. Artoria added, historical knowledge informing her assessment. The convergence threatens fundamental assumptions underlying cosmic power distribution since primordial chaos first encountered organizing principle, making the upcoming faction summit even more critically important, Rias concluded, political acumen identifying immediate strategic priorities. Today's successful cooperation provides practical demonstration to support theoretical alliance proposals. As their discussion continued, Kyoto's defensive forces completed systematic security restoration throughout the spiritual realm. Traitors were identified and contained, compromised protective systems repaired and enhanced, diplomatic implications assessed and addressed. Throughout this process, Eastern and Western representatives maintained unprecedented coordination, information sharing and resource allocation crossing traditional boundaries with remarkable efficiency. That evening, formal reception replaced their interrupted exploratory tour. Unlike previous diplomatic function governed by careful protocol, this gathering incorporated genuine celebration alongside political acknowledgement. Yukai court members who had witnessed Western allies defending their spiritual capital expressed sincere appreciation rather than merely formal courtesy. Most significant as Yasaka's public declaration regarding the convergence, formal recognition of Issei's unique status with specific acknowledgement of balanced integration potential rather than domination threat. This official Eastern position, declared before summit negotiations began, established powerful precedent that would influence neutral factions still assessing prophecy implications. The Eastern Supernat Ural community acknowledges Issei Hyodo as legitimate convergence vessel representing balanced integration of previously separate magical traditions, she proclaimed before assembled court and Western representatives. His demonstrated ability to interact harmoniously with Eastern spiritual infrastructure without compromising its essential nature confirms prophecy interpretation favoring evolution rather than conquest. This declaration, particularly from leader traditionally cautious regarding Western supernatural developments, carried immense diplomatic weight. Beyond immediate political advantage, it represented first formal acknowledgement from major supernatural faction that the convergence offered genuine cosmic benefit rather than merely power redistribution. Following official ceremony, smaller gathering allowed more personal interaction between key figures from both communities. Yasaka approached Issei directly, her formal diplomatic reserve softened by shared combat experience and demonstrated mutual respect. Your protection of my daughter during crisis demonstrates character beyond prophesied power, she acknowledged with genuine appreciation. Kuno possesses NT judgment regarding individuals worthy of trust, but rarely has her assessment been so immediately validated through practical demonstration. She showed remarkable courage and tactical intelligence, Issei responded sincerely. Her suggestion regarding the purification network proved crucial to disrupting the observer's ritual. You've prepared her well for eventual leadership responsibilities. Yasaka's expression revealed maternal pride briefly overshadowing royal dignity. She faces challenging future as next guardian of Kyoto's spiritual heart. The convergence will reshape supernatural reality during her reign in ways my generation can barely comprehend. Golden eyes studied him with renewed assessment. Your development proceeds faster than even accelerated prophecy timelines suggested possible. The integration stabilizes with each new application, he acknowledged, conscious of both progress and remaining limitations. Though fundamental understanding still outpaces practical implementation in many respects. A wise acknowledgement of developing rather than completed potential, she approved. Many with prophesied destinies mistake initial awakening for final manifestation. Their conversation continued, transitioning from formal diplomatic exchange to more substantive discussion regarding specific convergence implications for Eastern supernatural territories. Throughout this interaction, Issei noted subtle shift in Yasaka's approach, from cautious assessment of potential threat to thoughtful consideration of beneficial alliance. Across the gathering, his advisors engaged with Eastern counterparts in similarly productive exchanges. Artoria discussed historical interactions between Avalonian and Eastern magical systems with senior Yukai scholars, Ying previously unrecognized connections between seemingly separate traditions. Scathach shared ancient Celtic knowledge regarding barrier maintenance with Kyoto's defensive specialists, her immortal perspective offering solutions to long-standing technical challenges. Rias established diplomatic relationships with Yasaka's court officials, laying groundwork for formal alliance proposals at the upcoming summit. Most enthusiastic among Eastern representatives was Kuno, who had appointed herself unofficial cultural ambassador to their Western visitors. The young fox moved between groups with boundless energy, ensuring proper introductions and facilitating conversations across traditional boundaries. Her particular attention toward Issei revealed developing admiration beyond diplomatic court. Genuine appreciation for his role in protecting both herself and her kingdom's spiritual foundation. As the gathering continued, Issei found moment to observe these interactions from slight remove. Strategic mind assessing broader implications beyond immediate diplomatic success. The convergence had demonstrated practical value through crisis response, establishing credibility that theoretical discussion alone could never have achieved. Eastern supernatural community, traditionally cautious regarding Western developments, now viewed his unprecedented nature as potential asset rather than merely disruption to established order. Yasaka rejoined him during this reflective moment, her own analytical perspective apparently reaching similar conclusions. today creates foundation for genuine alliance rather than merely formal diplomatic recognition, she observed. Practical cooperation proves more persuasive than theoretical potential. The observer inadvertently provided opportunity to demonstrate what balanced integration truly means, Issei agreed. Beyond political realignment to fundamental reassessment of artificial limitations between magical traditions. Which raises Question regarding your intended approach to the convergence's broader implications, Yusaka noted, diplomatic caution briefly resurfacing. Power to reshape fundamental cosmic architecture carries responsibility beyond individual intention. The question, gently presented but addressing core concern regarding his developing abilities, deserved honest response rather than diplomatic deflection. The convergence's responsibility to facilitate necessary evolution rather than impose personal vision, he answered after thoughtful consideration. Balance requires continuous adjustment rather than rigid enforcement of artificial stability. His response seemed to satisfy her underlying concern, tension subtle but perceptible in her royal bearing diminishing noticeably. A perspective that aligns with Eastern philosophical traditions regarding natural harmony, she acknowledged with approval. And suggests potential for genuine partnership rather than merely political alliance. As their conversation continued, Issei became increasingly aware of shifting dynamic not merely in diplomatic context but personal interaction. Yusaka's assessment had evolved beyond formal evaluation of pro-physed entity to genuine interest in individual behind supernatural significance. Her questions explored his perspective and character rather than merely potential political implications, while her OWN responses revealed aspects of personality beyond royal authority. This developing connection, still undefined but increasingly evident, added unexpected dimension to already complex alliance considerations. Though focused primarily on strategic implications, Issei couldn't ignore gradually shifting personal dynamic between them. Unlike purely political relationships governing most supernatural interactions, their shared experience defending Kyoto had created foundation for genuine understanding beyond formal roles. The faction summit approaches quickly, Yusaka noted as their gathering began concluding. Eastern representatives will present unified position regarding the convergence based on today's demonstrated cooperation rather than merely theoretical assessment. The observer's OP position confirms beneficial potential beyond political realignment, Issei responded, strategic mind identifying core advantage from day's developments. Entities devoted to maintaining artificial separation between magical traditions clearly recognize genuine cosmic evolution potential in balanced integration, which necessitates continued cooperation beyond immediate crisis response, she concluded with diplomatic precision that nevertheless contained personal interest beneath formal phrasing. Kyoto offers ongoing access to Eastern magical research and practical implementation opportunities that complement your Western training perspectives. The invitation, carefully structured to emphasize mutual benefit while maintaining appropriate diplomatic framing, represented significant evolution from cautious preliminary meeting to substantive alliance proposal. Beyond political significance, it suggested personal trust developing between them that transcended formal supernatural protocols. An opportunity I would welcome, Issei acknowledged, balancing diplomatic response with genuine appreciation. The convergence requires comprehensive understanding across traditional boundaries, rather than merely Western magical context. As formal gathering concluded, arrangements solidified for continued cooperation extending beyond their originally planned brief visit. Eastern and West RN supernatural representatives would maintain unprecedented coordination through remaining pre-summit period, developing practical implementation strategies based on successful crisis response rather than merely theoretical alliance frameworks. Later that evening, as Issei prepared for rest following intensive day combining diplomatic function with unexpected combat application, he reflected on rapidly evolving circumstances surrounding the convergence. What began as personal awakening to unprecedented abilities had expanded into fundamental reassessment of cosmic organizational principles governing supernatural reality. His advisors joined him for final strategic assessment before retiring to their respective accommodations within Yusaka's compound. Each brought unique perspective RDING Day's developments that collectively provided comprehensive understanding beyond any single viewpoint. Yusaka offers more than political alliance, Rias observed with diplomatic precision that nevertheless acknowledged personal dimensions beneath formal proposals. Eastern supernatural leadership rarely extends such comprehensive cooperation without generations of established trust. The nine-tailed fox recognizes genuine balance potential in your convergence manifestation, Scathach added, ancient wisdom informing her assessment of developing dynamics. Beyond political advantage to fundamental cosmic evolution that benefits Eastern traditions as significantly as Western. Today's successful integration with Kyoto's spiritual infrastructure demonstrates practical application beyond theoretical potential. Artoria noted, strategic mind identifying core advantage from unexpected crisis response. The convergence enables harmonious interaction between previously separate Cal systems without compromising essential nature of either tradition. Their observations confirmed Issei's own strategic assessment while adding nuanced perspective from their respective expertise. Beyond immediate diplomatic success, today established foundation for comprehensive alliance incorporating Eastern supernatural community alongside Western traditions already aligned with the convergence. Most significantly, successful defense of Kyoto demonstrated practical implementation of theoretical balance the prophecy described, not merely combining separate powers but achieving genuine integration that preserved essential distinctions while enabling previously impossible harmony between traditionally opposed forces. As his advisors departed, Issei's reflection continued. Personal connections developing alongside political alliances added complexity beyond strategic considerations, Yusaka's evolving interest representing unexpected dimension to convergence implications. The nine-eyed fox's subtle shift from cautious assessment to genuine appreciation suggested potential relationship transcending mere political alliance. A soft knock interrupted these considerations. Opening his door revealed Kuno, the young fox princess having exchanged formal court attire for more casual clothing appropriate to evening hours. Despite relaxed appearance, her expression contained seriousness beyond her apparent age. Forgive late intrusion, she began with formal politeness that nevertheless revealed youthful enthusiasm beneath royal protocol. But I wished to express personal gratitude for your protection during today's crisis before official proceedings consume remaining diplomatic schedule. No forgiveness needed, Issei assured her, genuine appreciation for her character evident in his response. Your courage and tactical intelligence proved crucial to successful defense of Kyoto's spiritual heart. His sincere acknowledgement clearly pleased her, golden eyes brightening with pride at recognition from the convergence vessel whose abilities had proven so instrumental in preserving her kingdom's foundation. Mother says your integration with our purification network demonstrates unprecedented compatibility between Eastern and Western magical principles. A discovery that benefits both traditions, he confirmed, recognizing her scholarly interest beneath diplomatic conversation. The convergence enables genuine interaction without artificial barriers that limited previous cooperation attempts. Kuno nodded with scholarly enthusiasm that momentarily overshadowed royal dignity, revealing the curious young fox beneath formal princess exterior. I've studied theoretical convergence possibilities between separate magical systems since beginning formal education. Today's practical demonstration confirms hypotheses previously considered merely academic speculation. Their conversation continued, shifting between formal diplomatic exchange and more natural interaction reflecting genuine connection developing beyond supernatural politics. Throughout this discussion, Issei noted remarkable maturity in the young fox's perspective, analytical intelligence, and diplomatic awareness beyond her apparent age, yet retaining refreshing directness that contrasted with careful calculation governing most supernatural interactions. Mother rarely extends such comprehensive alliance opportunity to Western entities, Kuno observed with surprising political awareness. Her invitation for continued cooperation represents significant departure from traditional Eastern supernatural protocols regarding separate development paths. The convergence necessitates reassessment of artificial limitations between magical traditions, Issei acknowledged, respecting her evident political understanding rather than offering simplified explanation her intelligence clearly didn't require. Successful defense of Kyoto demonstrated practical benefits beyond theoretical potential, and personal trust beyond diplomatic advantage, she added with perceptiveness that caught him momentarily by surprise. Mother evaluates supernatural politics through millennia of historical perspective, but individual character through direct observation during crisis response. This insight, revealing sophisticated understanding of Yasaka's leadership approach from unique perspective. I've only her daughter could provide, offered valuable context for developing alliance beyond formal diplomatic assessment. The nine-tailed fox's evolving interest incorporated genuine personal connecti on alongside strategic evaluation of convergence implications. As their conversation reached natural conclusion, Kuno offered parting observation that demonstrated remarkable perception regarding MP Lex dynamics developing around the convergence. The prophecy speaks of balanced integration between previously separate forces. Today showed such balance extends beyond magical systems to relations. Hips between individuals representing different traditions. With that insightful comment reflecting wisdom beyond her years, the young fox princess bid him good night, leaving Issei to consider imply cations of successful first interaction with Eastern supernatural leadership. Beyond diplomatic advantage or political alliance, today had demonstrated genuine potential for balanced integration. The convergence represented harmony that preserved essential distinctions while enabling previously impossible cooperation between traditionally separate traditions. Tomorrow would bring continued exploration of Kyoto's spiritual geography, formal alliance negotiations, strategic preparation for the approaching faction summit. For this moment, however, Issei allowed himself brief appreciation of significant progress toward understanding his unprecedented role in supernatural evolution. The convergence awakening that began with personal discovery of dual heritage now expanded into fundamental assessment of cosmic organizational principles. Eastern winds of change joined Western currents of transformation, creating harmonious flow that promised genuine evolution beyond artificial limitations. Maintained through millennia of supernatural separation. Balance through diversity rather than enforced uniformity. Strength through integration rather than opposition. The convergence path revealed, through practical implementation rather than merely theoretical potential. As Issei finally sought rest following transformative day combining diplomatic function with combat application, he recognized growing clarity regarding his unique responsibility. Beyond personal power development or political advantage, the convergence offered genuine cosmic evolution benefiting all magical traditions willing to embrace necessary transformation rather than clinging to artificial limitations. The Eastern winds had brought not merely new allies but expanded understanding of the convergence's true significance, balanced integration that transcended traditional boundaries while preserving essential distinctions that gave each tradition its unique value. Chapter 3 End. The end. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.